Good evening, everyone. Welcome back then to another LFM stream here for round 9 of the Pro Series, where tonight our drivers are going to be undertaking the mighty challenge of 90 minutes around Bathurst circuit. Yes, we are here at Mount Panorama, the Australian green hell as such, and such a demanding circuit, which without a shadow of a doubt is going to test some of the best drivers on the platform to their limit, and we are in for an absolute treat of racing this evening. Last week we were at Zolder, where Marco Bischoff took his second win of the season, just half a second in front of Jardier. It's been a while since we have seen those two going toe-to-toe on the race circuit, but the Belgian circuit, the lesser-known Belgian circuit, obviously comparatively to Spa, put on a brilliant show for us, and it was the Porsche driver, the reigning champion, that came out on top of all of that, and in doing so cemented his place for the first time this season in the championship lead. And speaking of which, it's pretty interesting at the top of the standings right now, with my little adjustment spreadsheet taking into account current drop scores along this season so far. Marco Bischoff has the championship lead by just 41 points over Maciej Malinowski, which, when you consider we're talking about scores over 5,000, is an absolute smidge. However, that could all change this evening, because in the closing few minutes before the server opens, as far as I'm aware, Maciej hasn't joined the server, and this would mean this would be his first race beyond what he could take in terms of a drop score for this season, and effectively put him one drop score behind his championship rival. Marco Bischoff has also used up one of his drop scores already, but that does allow the likes of Grantis Caracas, Jardier, Valentin Barrier all to start jumping in to those podium spots potentially, and see if they can claim some slightly better prizes for themselves. So I have to see how it all plays out this evening on the mountain. Of course, a few more races to go in this amazing season that we've had so far. I'm going to have to see how it all plays out. Before we get too deep into the action, I do want to just take a quick moment to say a couple of things. First of all, over the last week, we have hit a couple of milestones. One, we actually crossed over 1,400 subscribers today, so thank you very much, everybody that has been continuing to subscribe to the channel. It's been amazing to have all of that support, and very much linked in with that support. Over the past week, this channel hit a target which we were hoping here at LFM might be achievable by the end of the year, but with all of your guys' incredible support, we actually hit it in just a space of 3 months. We crossed over a target of 4,000 watch hours, which, if you know some of the inner details of YouTube, now means that this channel is can be applied to the YouTube Partner Program, which is just an absolutely incredible thing for us, and just we're very, very grateful that you have all been enjoying all this action and following us on this journey, and in such a short space of time have given us all of that support and got us to where we are today. So thank you, everybody, so much for that, and we look forward to what the future holds. And also, just as another note of exciting things happening, around the corner is Sim Racing Expo, and if you are going to be there over the next few days, LFM does actually have a stand at the event, so do consider, if you're going to be there, going over and saying hello to those on the stand and meeting some of those that are behind the inner workings of this amazing platform, and it would be lovely to see some of you there. But into what we have going on tonight then, let's have a little bit of a tour around this incredible circuit that is going to be treating our drivers to one intense bit of action for this evening. 6.2 kilometers of absolute mayhem around this circuit. 23 corners for them to deal with, making your way through Hell Corner to start with, and then the big climb up the hill towards Quarry, and then up through into the cutting of 3, 4 and 5, mastering your way through this very twisty, windy section as you continue the climb all the way up towards Skyline, and you start to make your way back down the hill through the very tricky dipper section, so tight and twisty through there. That is a really test of a driver's skill. Flurry way down towards Forest Elbow, and then down the Conrod Straight. That's where we'll see some big overtaking opportunities potentially happening around here. You want good straight line speed in your car and then blasting away through the chase on the kink down towards the tail end into turn 21. And then down into the final corner of Murray's before rounding out the lap. And this circuit will keep you on your toes every step of the way. And it is a very unforgiving one of that. And is really going to be pushing all of our drivers to their absolute limits. And also, we have potential for a little bit of changeable weather this evening, which across a 90-minute race as well gives us a even more of a tantalizing prospect for some exciting stuff. So we'll have to see how all of that plays out, but I'm sure one way or another that this Australian masterpiece is going to be providing us all the adrenaline and excitement that we could possibly want from a bit of evening racing on the LFM Pro Series. So the server should be up now, so I shall look to make our way into this one in just a second. And the server is up, so we can look to make our way into there. And yes, I think there's a little bit of back and forth in terms of some of the corner names and track maps. I know occasionally, sometimes the diagrams have been a little bit on the wonky side, so I think that might be where some of the disagreement pops up between them. And also, I think maybe over the years there's been some changes. As I shall get these graphics and everything underway, and then we can start to have a look at these drivers making their way around this circuit for the first time. We'll be looking to get their setups, tyre pressures, everything, you name it, dialed in before it all kicks off for this evening's action. Let's just get these last couple of things done and out of the way, and I do believe, if I'm not mistaken, that we can start to have a look at some of our drivers making our way through. So let's see who we've got. We've got the BMW of Polovchuk currently making his way around. One of the Ferraris trying to fly around him as well in all of that. And I do apologise, I think the animation had a little bit of a futtock through the middle of that. But I see the clarification for the corner names. Yes, I imagine that when it does all go wrong around this very demanding circuit, there's a few exclamations that perhaps wouldn't be quite so appropriate for me to name these corners, but they do certainly put you through your paces when you make your way around this absolutely incredible racetrack. I'll have to see how all of our drivers fare tonight. We'll also just, in this final few minutes of practice, get the remaining parts of our leaderboard sorted so we can see how everyone is getting on relative to the fastest times. We make our way over to qualifying. That graphic will have a little bit of a wobbly, but all should be sorted in due course, and we can see how everyone is getting on. Let's see, who do we have out on circuit at the moment? We do have this man, Jaroslav Honzik Jardier, as the Yassi driver dips wheel on the exit of the penultimate corner then. And let's see, the Honda should be pretty handy around here today, and I think it's going to make for a really interesting BOP as Jardier goes up to the top of the timesheets for the time being by a big margin as well. 7/10 over Lohan van den Einde, the Belgian driver in the Ferrari. And cars like the Mercedes, the Honda, the Bentley as well. I think we've got Eagle back in the server tonight with the Bentley, so it'll be really interesting to see how he gets on. All of those cars are very, very quick around here. The Aston Martin even is very drivable around this circuit and has tremendous straight line speed down the hill. And the Porsches, in the hands of our main championship protagonists like Marco Bischoff, Grantas Korekas, not the strongest around this circuit, partly due to their power deficit, despite the BOP changes that have allowed those cars to just be a bit more competitive in a straight line with the aerodynamic changes that were made in terms of their straight line speed. They don't quite have the grunt that they need in order to be as competitive as they would like around this track. The Mercedes was an absolute monster around here at one point, still is, although one of the few times in the recent BOP changes that we had in the last major overhaul, this was the one circuit, I believe, where the Mercedes did actually receive a slight detune in terms of power. So Mercedes a little bit slower than it once was. We see Gianni really flirting with the edges of the limits where he can push on the exit at Forest Elbow. We want to maximise that as much as possible for this run down the hill. And Czech driver putting that to great effect and example. But yeah, these guys going to be extracting absolutely everything. You see just that little bit of extra tarmac on the run before the chase. It's surprisingly useful. You wouldn't think that it would end up making so much a difference, but particularly if you're going side by side through there, you will see drivers trying to make use of that extra bit of grey stuff to open up the corner and allow themselves to get there through safely. And yeah, so the likes of Bischoff, Korekas may not be the fastest drivers on circuit for the first time in a while. We know that they can do some pretty special things. Korekas has had 2 pole positions this season, hasn't been able to convert either one of them into a win just yet, but he's been looking in very fine form. And Marco Bischoff, of course, reigning champion from Season 7, and it has been very competitive once again all season long. But the Porsches won't be working quite in their favour this evening, and maybe the likes of the Hondas, even the BMWs as well, very drivable car around here, is going to be very quick. So it'll be interesting to see how it all plays out. We've got just over 2 minutes left of this practice session left to go, as Jody continues to make his way around the circuit. Who else have we got flying on around? We've got another Bentley on circuit at the moment as well. We've got Vackstrom in the 28 car. So he joined us for the first time, last time out at Zolder. So Bentley, nice to see that car on the grid again. It's kind of got a little bit back and forth as of late. It's a car that still has pace available to it. Dry conditions around this circuit should suit it a lot better than the damp, wet conditions that we had at Zolder last time out. The Bentley is very, very quick at Zolder, but it struggles in the wet. It can't get its power down. There's no weight over the back wheels. And I think I mentioned it last week. That's a big hit on the exit of the dipper for Jonathan Clifford, the American driver, trying to extract everything and a little bit too much from that Lamborghini and clipping the barrier. Got to be careful of that in the race, of course. But the Bentley, the only car in the entirety of ACC, I believe, where the centre of mass is actually more towards the front than the rear. And that's why, despite how big and bulky that car is, it's very agile with the rear axle. But what comes with that? A bit of a lack of stability and difficulty in getting the power down. In the wet conditions, with a slightly kind of crude TC system, it doesn't quite do what the drivers in those Bentleys would be wanting it to do. So the dry conditions, if it does stay dry around here, will be more in line with what they would have been hoping, as certain drivers just finishing out their laps. Jonathan Clifford pulling over to the side. Currently top 3 is Jardier, Low and Van Dinder in the Ferrari. Be interested to see how that Ferrari gets on. I think in the top section of this circuit, over the hill, the downforce that Ferrari can bolt on, that's going to make that car very, very quick through the likes of McFinley Park. You'll see certain drivers maybe struggling with understeer, trying to keep their car out of the gravel, but the Ferrari should stay pretty bolted to the road. Hopefully not commentator cursing any of our Ferrari drivers this evening, but I do recall it being quite nice through sections. But it's going to be in the areas of the undulation, and particularly there's a spooky bump through the inside of the chase at turn 20, and we know that the Ferrari suspension physics can be a little bit tricky to deal with at times. I'll have to see how that all plays out. Meanwhile, Grantis Korekas is currently driving very quickly, purple on his lap and going a second up on his previous Delta, so this is a statement just before the end of the session. He goes faster than Jardier by 3.5 tenths of a second, so the man that is currently second in the standings in outright points, third if you account for drop scores. But with Massier not joining tonight, I do think that this is realistically the man that sits P2 overall in the championship. But maybe those Porsches still looking pretty feisty in terms of outright pace. Marco Bischoff, last week's winner, current championship leader, didn't put in too much of representative time, and we are now making our way over to qualifying. See how they all get on with that. As they all make their way out onto the mountain for the very first time. It looks like it's going to be the number 23 of Polchuk that will be the first to try to set a time on the mountain. And my goodness, we'll be looking forward to the onboard of this, because this is such a test of drivers' skill. I think Bathurst is realistically... Probably, I don't feel too wrong in perhaps saying this, that this is the most intense track to drive around other than the Nordschleife. I think that would be a fairly reasonable comment. There's a little bit of a wiggle for the number 23. No other tracks come to mind right now where you're just so on edge, pushing the limits. You see, concrete walls, it's so unforgiving around here. And if it's not concrete, it's a gravel trap that if you dip the wheel in there, you will be spat off into the concrete wall on the other side. So the margins are so fine. It's like driving around the world's fastest street circuit. And with all of this undulation, the commitment that you need in these cars is absolutely massive. So we'll have to see how some of the best drivers on the LFM platform get on with this. They'll have 15 minutes to put in their qualifying efforts. They won't get quite as many laps as perhaps they normally would. These laps over 2 minutes long. You can, I think, dip into the 59s, maybe even the 58s if you really manage to wring the neck out of your GT car, but I think on average, particularly with these track temperatures, we will be looking at around the 2 minute mark. But let's go on board with the M4 of the number 23 of Pavlo, who is going to take us for a lap. The first man to go around the mountain in this qualifying session. So setting himself up for a good exit onto the start-finish straight. It's a pretty short run in comparison to the rest of the circuit. But in towards Hell Corner, get the car dipped in towards that camber, but be wary of that curb. A little bit of a wiggle on the exit using the AstroTurf, and now use all that momentum up the hill. This is where all the cars with all the torque, the Mercedes, even the Lamborghini now has a lot of power in it. So these will be the cars that start shifting their way up very quickly on this climb up the hill. Try to spot your braking point in towards turn 2. Really got to get yourself hooked into that camber. If you're on the outside, that's another kick of oversteer for the M4 there. If you're on the outside on there when you're going 2x2, you're likely going to be losing out there because there's such a vast difference in the speed. Rounding out through the cutting then of turn 4, back across to the right hand side. It's relentless in this section of the track. Over to the left hand side, back towards the right. Stay wary of that barrier and use up all the margins that you possibly can through the dip. Trying to spot your apex in towards the next crest. Clipping the concrete on the exit there of turn 9 and then through in towards turn 10. You don't want to be doing that too much in the race, but he'll get away with it for now in qualifying. Down in towards the dipper then through the S's and trying to hear him playing around with the gears. He got a little bit of a wheel spin through there as well. That won't have been helping his lap time. Now in towards Forest Elbow. Try to spot your braking point. You'll see this barrier just out there. Try to keep your nose slightly away from that, wary of the concrete wall on the exit of turn 18. And now breathe for about 20 odd seconds. You start to try to think about, particularly when these guys are putting together their final laps in this qualifying session, trying to spot your braking point in towards turn 21 is a mighty difficult effort. Where's he going to brake? Just about the 100 meter mark on the entry there, clipping the apex, playing around with the gears there. I think maybe even downshifted an extra one. You can really keep up the momentum through there if you keep up a high gear. Then in towards the final corner at Murray's turn 23. Be wary of that apex, using a bit of the exit curb and across the line for Polovchuk, and it is a 201.3 for the BMW, but immediately beaten by Lohan van den Einde in the Ferrari as everyone starts to make their way through for the first time. Lucas Joubert in the Mercedes, only good enough for P4 for the time being. How does everyone else fare? Giardio about to finish his lap. He only goes up to P2, so 302nd off the Ferrari driver. Soldestov in the BMW. No purple sectors, but overall quickest man on circuit. First into the 2 minutes. Where are some of our other... that's a big moment for Henrik Gamble. Somehow gathers all of that one up and goes for the ride of his life through the dipper, and that's not what you want to be doing all too often. Jardier going very quickly in purple. Grantis Crackers backed out of his lap for the time being. Marco Bischoff, the K. Kramer Racing Esports car, just in front of his teammate Henrik Gamble. And I think Bischoff driving very quickly at the moment. Have to see what he can do. We haven't got too much of representative time for him just yet to see whereabouts he sits in overall pace. But we know just how special this man is. 0-1, that Florian Duacop, the Unicorns of Love Mercedes driver, goes to the top of the timesheets by 7/10 of a second. That's a quick time. Only 2/10 outside of those 59 markers, and he's already half a second up on his previous best. So let's see what Marco Bischoff can do, rounding out the lap in the Porsche, using a bit of the tracker more, and it's only good enough for P3, and it's 8/10 of a second behind the Mercedes. So I said to be wary of this sort of car. And the pink and black Mercedes right now absolutely flying as close to the wall as you can possibly dare. Florian absolutely extracting everything as he makes his way through the middle sector. Brilliant stuff. Florian has shown some fantastic pace at times, but his consistency has let him down on occasion. Will today be the day that all changes? Mercedes very competitive around this circuit. And if you are feeling confident in your car, then you can be very quick. Half a second up on his previous lap time. Right now, he is absolutely blitzing the field here. Lucas Schubert, one of the other Mercedes, falls adrift by only 0.05 of a second, but I think that gap is going to open up by quite a chunk. Jardier, in actual fact, is on a big improvement, trying to see if he can sneak his way up to the front row. Not quite. Only good enough for P3 at the moment, but keep an eye on this man. Florian, still very much purple on his previous lap time. What can the number 8 car do? Tidy through turns 21 and 22. So many corners on this circuit. Spot your braking point in towards Murray's. This could be a big lap there for Florian, the first man, in towards the 59s, and it's a titanic time. A 59.7 for Florian. Slightly slower in the final sector than his previous lap time. Maybe took the best out of those tyres overall there. But that is a statement and a half there from the Unicorns Love Mercedes. It's Mercedes 1 and 2 so far in this session, followed by Jardier. Solstov sits in P4. And the likes of Marco Bischoff, half second up on his lap time, but that's still put him 8/10 adrift of where he needs to be for another pole position. Still, crucially, would get him up to the pointy end of the grid. And maybe for Marco, it's going to be a bit of damage limitation today. Just bank in another decent result. He's got a few points in the bag, and it's good enough for P4, but just a few tenths, in actual fact 4/10 behind the driver that he was scrapping with last week out at Zolder. How about the likes of Valentin? He has found 2/10 in the opening part of the lap. The Aston Martin flying through a section as we go blitzing on past through the crest there as he swoops his way through this next couple of sections. And he's got traffic! Oh, I'm not sure if he would have had to have backed out of the throttle for that one. That was one of the Audis on the circuit there. So difficult to try to have a clean lap around here sometimes in qualifying, diving down in towards the dip of the Aston Martin. So close to all of those concrete walls flying through this section. Confidence inspired in that car. It's a car that really urges you to push, absolutely pushing all of the limits as much as he can. How's he fare through Forest Elbow? That looks clean, and it also looked very tight to the concrete. 4/10 up now is the improvement for the Frenchman, and he would be looking to get into around the mid 2 minute mark. Korekis goes up to P4, 2:04 for the driver started on pole position last week. Bischoff has found a couple of tenths in the opening part of his lap as well, so still not done for the German. Maybe a little bit too much curve for the Aston Martin there, or Valentin, but it didn't seem to upset the car all too much. Frenchman stayed just about around the same margin of improvement as he had in the middle sector, losing a bit out of Murray's on the exit, but it's good enough to scrape his way in towards the top 10. And number 5 car gets himself in towards 10th position for the time being. I think Marco was just on a lap and he pulled it across to the side of the road. So, that gets very interesting between the likes of Henrik Gamble and the Bentley that were going side by side. That was Vaxstrom on the run up towards. Oh dear, it didn't end very well, I don't think, by the looks of it. We'll see if we can catch the rest of what happened. Oh, and I think, I'm not sure entirely what's happened there, because Vaxstrom, you see, is a bit further up the road in the Bentley. I think Henrik Gamble may have just bailed out of that one and was trying to find a bit of space. But yeah, that is a very awkward bit of circumstance for those going to see the Unicorns Love Mercedes current pole sitter, the only man in the 59s right now, ahead of another one of the Mercedes, Lucas Schubert, who showed very good pace at Zolder. I'm trying to remember I think he was... Oh dear, that's Klaus Petrol into the wall. Let's have a look and see how that all played out. What happened there? Oh dear! Oh, that's a snooker moment and a half. That's Florian going flying through there. And that was the white Audi of... I'm trying to work out who that would have been. Let's see if we can pull up our Audi drivers. There's not all too many of them on the board. And was it Thomas Morant in the white Audi? We've got a white Audi flying through our screen. No, he's in the pink number 9 car by the looks of it. So I think it might have been Giannis Saknis, the Greek driver, that was in that car. Yes, indeed, by the looks of it. So just completely got his braking wrong on the run up towards the cutting then. And it's such a tricky braking zone. Unfortunately, the BMW didn't quite catch who it was at the time, being punted into the concrete wall then. And unfortunately losing out on some time on track. Meanwhile, Florian is on a lap at the moment. He's a tenth and a half up. He's going a bit back and forth on the Delta, but it is going to be an improvement, I think, for Florian. And it's a 59.6. He extended advantage over Lucas Chabert, now up to about half a second. So brilliant stuff from the German driver, who seems to have maybe found a bit of form that he's been lacking in recent events. Maybe this is the circuit he's been waiting for it to all come together. Bischoff about to set up a lap for himself. Korekis has found a 10th in the opening pass of the lap. Let's see that Porsche flying over the crest. There's such an amazing sequence of camera angles. It's just full-on attack through here. It's such a fantastic flow around this circuit when it all comes together and you get it right, but my goodness, is it terrifying when it all goes wrong, and particularly in the Porsche. It's he goes a little bit wider through Dippy. Would have lost a bit of momentum there. He kept up good speed though, did lose some exit speed in the end, but still is up on his previous best time. But that Porsche, we know the lift-off oversteer is very substantial in that car, and that is what gives it a lot of its agility. But my goodness, is it a tricky car to master when it gets loose underneath you. As Kirkus now still a tenth and a half up on his previous best lap time. As the Aston Martin, I think it might be Alex Kingston, if I'm not mistaken, just up the road in front of him. Won't give Korekis too much trouble, I don't think. Last week's pole sitter, 2 times pole sitter this season. 2 tenths up. Bischoff also quarter of a second up on his lap time, but right now not good enough to challenge Florian Duerkop. Korekis, though, what's it going to be for him? Good enough for P3 in the number 2 car. Whereabouts is Bischoff on circuit? He's continuing to find time. He's at a much quicker middle sector than previously. Florian just getting out of the way for the time being. And I don't think Florian, unless he's going to continue on this lap, I think he is, so he'll have one more flying attempt left to go. Lucas Chabert has improved on his lap time, only 4 tenths adrift now, and going a bit back and forth on the time delta as well, as we get an invasion from the bots. Obviously very excited about this Australian masterpiece of a circuit, and joining the action even a bit earlier than normal. A huge bit of drifting on the run through the chicane there. And Bischoff trying to extract everything he can. The German driver, we know how good he is, but I'm not sure the Porsche has quite got the pace to contend for the win tonight. But Bischoff trying to see if he can be best of the Porsches, and I'm not sure it's going to be good enough. No, 2:04 behind Jardier and behind Korekis. So Korekis still with the honours for the fastest in the German outfit at the moment of finding time is himself and Florian, who I believe has just started his lap. Got a mighty exit out of the last corner there, but has had a bit of a poor run through Hell Corner at turn 1. That's going to lose him all the momentum. You can see the Delta falling away from you, and that is going to be tricky to recover. So we've already seen how hard these guys are pushing. Lucas Chabert has no more attempts left, and he won't start any higher up than P2. A great effort there from the Mercedes driver, who's been continuing to improve as of late. Who else is up on their time at the moment? Alessio Mellis in the Ferrari. the Italian number 18 car, currently sitting in P9. Great effort from him. Jardier has found a 10th and a bit as well. I think he's a bit further behind on circuit, so we'll stay with Alessio as he makes his way through a chase. Let's go on board in the Ferrari. It might be a bumpy ride through. I've got to be so careful of that curve. Not causing too much an issue at the moment, but that may change when he makes his way onto high fuel. Thread your way through 21 and 22. And on the run up towards the final corner, Alessio trying to see if he can just gain a couple of positions. Margins very tight at tail end of the field, using all of the curve and a bit more. And in the end, it is an improvement, but it's not good enough to move him up a position. Does exactly the same time as Dave Hardy, in fact. Jardier unable to improve, just 300ths a second down on his previous time. Correca still out on a lap, so I think he must have crossed the time beam just in time. And with this sort of pace, he could challenge Lucas Schubert. So we'll have to see what he can do. What about Marco Bischoff? He's got a 10th and a half in hand. Can he challenge the man he was racing with last week? The man he was dueling with all of last season for P4. And no, it's only good enough for P5 by a few thousandths of a second for the German driver. Your championship leader won't start any higher than P5 then. And Soldatov, in actual fact, on an improvement himself, and he could, if he has a good final sector, he could displace the likes of Bischoff and Jardier, the M4, maybe on a bit stronger pace. We saw it was very competitive at Suzuka, and that's a big moment, though, for the number 6 car, and he's lost all of that advantage, and it's going to come down to a few thousandths, I think, by the time he goes through the final corner, just pushing the car a little bit too hard, getting away from you, and the number 6 car losing that time. He does find just about enough to get up to P6, but there was definitely more time on the table there. Correca still on his lap, currently up enough on his time to maybe just dip into the 59s. He's very good over one lap, sliding the back of that car out on the exit of 21 there. Very similar to Bischoff, but he's lost time on the exit. Can he split the two Mercedes at the front of the field? It's looking good enough. It was a poor exit. It's going to be so close. It's not good enough. By the end of it, the trade-off in time at the end of all of that means that Caracas will start no higher then than P3 for this race. But my goodness, Mercedes 1 and 2. And the pace that Florian Duikop has shown at points in this season comes to fruition around the mountain. And he puts it all together with a very, very special lap in the end to get his first pole in the Pro Series. Fantastic stuff from the German driver. We'll have a look through the field in just a moment, but that was a fantastic taste of things to come around this Australian legendary circuit around here. As just waiting for those graphics to come on through, and then we shall take a look at our grid for this evening. And there we go, I can make our way across. So, looking at our pole sitter, and then Florian Duikop, his first pole position in the Pro Series. Amazing stuff from him, and it's a Mercedes 1-2. Long time since we have seen a result like that. Lucas Schubert, great effort there from him in the number 10 car. And then Caracas, very fast in qualifying. We've seen that, 2 pole positions this season. Hasn't quite put it together in the race so far, but he has done very well in that to get some good pace out of the Porsche. Jardier starts in 4th place. Maybe the Honda will have something special in race pace. Marco Bischoff, your championship leader and reigning champion, starts in P5. Soltsov, good effort there from him in the BMW M4 to start in 6th place with Sebastian Krohn, another one on the Mercedes. Very strong car, clearly today. The number 16 starting in 7th place. Great stuff from him. Dave Hardy, the number's 27, starting in P8. That's a fantastic qualifying from the German driver. Remember, these car numbers correspond to their relative ELO in the server, so the bigger disparity in those numbers, particularly if the position is smaller than the race number, that is very good stuff. Alessio Melis in the Ferrari starting in 9th place. Ogun Rodnikov in the Bentley rounding out top 10, so good stuff there from him. Valentin Barrier in the Aston Martin starts in P11 with Henrik Gamble starting in 12th place, a little bit further back away from his K Chroma Racing Esports teammate than he was at Zolder, but maybe able to weave his way through the field. Lohan van den Einde Belgian driver starting in 13th, with Denis Suarez, another one of the Hondas, starting in 15th position, and then Justin Kreisner in the number 26 Mercedes starts in 15th place. Pavlo Polovchuk, the man that took us for our first tour in qualifying around this circuit, starts in 16th position, and then the Finnish driver of Nico Pendon starts in 17th. Then we have Roman Jukas starting in 18th place, another one of the M4s in this little trio. And then Sasha Vassner in the Audi starts in 19th position. For rounding out the top 20 is Max Florenz, the German driver, number 14 car, starting in 20th place with that very bright pink. Mercedes won't be able to miss that one too much. Sean Tempest, number 15 car, starts in 21st place with Jan Drexler, number 25 car, starting in 22nd position. And just behind him, another one of the Audis is the number 3 car, Robin Schaefer, starts 23rd, with Klaus Petrel in the 35. Had a bit of a interesting qualifying session. Did get that punt from the white Audi. Hopefully won't be repeating some of that in the race. Fingers crossed. Bright pink Audi of Thomas Morant, the number 9 car, starts in 25th position. And then Bjorn Bredin in 26th place with the number 33 of Janis Saxnis in 27th place. Andre Bayer in the number 31 Audi will start in 28th position. And then just behind him in 29th, Jonathan Clifford in the Lamborghini. Good qualifying from him. Difficult car to extract pace around here, but that may be a car that works very nicely down the straight, so might be able to make his way up the order in the race. Paulo Lima starts in 30th place with Steen Hilhorst in the 31st spot, with Jonathan Vackstrom in the 28 car. Another one of the Bentleys as that V8 roars into life as the formation lap gets underway. Alex Kingston in the Aston Martin down in 33rd place. And then a very special man on circuit night in another one of the Aston Martins. It is the boss of LFM, Mr. Boris Schulk. The number 19 car starts in 34th position. And then rounding out the grid is James Rolfe, Canadian driver, will start in 35th position. And we shall be very quickly and shortly be underway for 90 minutes of action around this circuit. For the foreseeable, it's looking like they will have dry conditions, but we have a long way to go in this race and we could see things moving about a little bit, so I have to see how it all plays out in that regard. One mandatory pit stop as normal for each of these drivers. I'm going to have to see how they play the strategy, if they do have any of that sort of thing to contend with, because if the rain does hit, it's all an element of timing the strategy calls of when do you go from one tyre compound to the other. Do you not go for it at all? If it's brief, do you try to just stick it out on the wrong tyre and hope that you don't end up dropping it? And around a circuit like this, confidence is key. And if we do have those changeable conditions, how is it going to be for the cars? Are the cars just suited for qualifying? Are they well adapted for the race? Are they well adapted for different mixed conditions, temperatures? This circuit has it all, and it will be pushing our drivers to the limit. Florian Duicot then gets his first pole position in the Pro Series. Stunning pace throughout that entire qualifying session. Really was in a league of his own. And he'll be seeing if he can convert it into a victory. I imagine that he will be very hungry to see if he can do that. He's shown some great pace at times, but hasn't quite managed to put it together on race day. If he can do it at Bathurst, it would be a big statement indeed. Around the mountain green hell of Australia, as they all go down Conrod Straight for the last time before they get underway for all of this racing. And also, as someone has already mentioned in the chat, yes, we do in fact have Jardier versus Mabix in the grid again. 4th and 5th place, maybe not quite on outright pace for the win, as we've got a car that has already gone to the pits. Another 34 of Roman Jukas in the BMW has already gone into the pits. That's disaster there for the M4. Hopefully not too much of a big issue for him, but that is obviously a disaster for his race overall, but hopefully nothing that will completely end it. These guys will be quite bottlenecked over the top of the hill on the first lap, so if he can get back out once they all get underway and start from the pit lane, he might well be able to close up to the back of the pack fairly quickly in the M4. So not all said and done with by any means, but all of these drivers now get themselves lined up into formation. We've got the fast accelerating Porsches and Hondas behind these two Mercedes on the front row, but the grunt of those V8s are mighty up the hill, so if they can keep it clean on the run towards turn 1, expect those to pull away. But will Lucas Chabert be able to challenge the German driver of Florian Duicop? Both these drivers starting in their best position so far, but for 90 minutes of action around 9 in the Pro Series here at Bathurst Race Circuit, we are about to get underway. Who will take the crown out of the mountain? It's a good start there by the looks of it from both Mercedes, and Lucas Chabert making a great run around the outside. So's Jardier. Lucas Chabert trying to go around the outside in towards turn 1, but he can't quite make it stick. He's alongside Jardier in the slipstream as they all funnel into a single line. Bischoff now trying to see if he can go towards the outside, but I don't think that was going to work. Can Chabert do anything on the run up towards turn 2? Jardier trying to go around the outside of Carreras. That's very, very brave from all of them. Florian doesn't feel the need to defend. Jardier squeezed around the outside there. That's going to be very tricky for him, and he's lost the position to Marco Bischoff and also maybe to Solentov as well, the BMW driver, trying to get involved in all of this one as well as they're side by side up towards the cutting. Can they get through there cleanly? Just about. The Czech driver holds on to P5 then. The dream start there for Florian Duicop. Chabert second, Grantas Krekas third place, but pressure already from the German driver, the reigning champion. Jardier down 5th, Solentov 6th, and then we have Hardy, Ogorovnikov, Melis and Krohn rounding out the top 10. But Florian Duicop doing everything he needed to do off the start of this one and getting himself into prime position, trying to convert this one into a race win. How is everyone else faring down in towards the dipper? Jardier breaking away a little bit already from... Oh, that's a big moment for Suarez. Suarez in towards the wall, and hopefully not collecting anybody else, but he's already lost it down in towards the dipper, so disaster for the number 17 car. The Spaniard has gone off, and he's now under pressure from a lot of cars down in towards Forest Elbow. Heavy damage, I imagine, on the front of that car. Let's check back in at the front of the field. Florian a second ahead now of Lucas Chabert. Great start for him, but Bischoff trying to put pressure onto Carreras, seeing if he can do anything on the run down towards turn 21 for the first time. Hard on the brakes, but he's too far back by the looks of it. What about some of the drivers behind? Oh, his teammate Henrik Gamble, big off on the exit of the chase there. Someone else going side by side. That's Sebastian Krohn that's gone wide through that sequence of corners, and Barry and Pennington making their way through as those two go side by side on the run up towards Marius, the Frenchman defending the inside very hard in towards 23. Pennington trying to see if he can get the comeback. It's been a great start for the Finnish driver, in fact, as they run up towards turn 1, but disaster there for Henrik Gamble. And Vanteen having to defend from the M4 once again. But they all managed to get through there fairly cleanly for the time being. How do they all fare on the drag race up towards the top of the hill? Cameras being a little bit laggy. I want to see the action, if you wouldn't mind. And the Italian trying to go around the outside. He can't make that one stick. What about Vanteen versus Pennant? Pennant, a huge run around the outside in towards turn 2 there. Can he make it stick? That's a very difficult line to hold, and he's not going to be able to. And he might lose out Sebastian Krohn, who's trying to recover these positions. The Mercedes flying around the outside in towards the cutting as they all fly on through there up towards turn 4, and the Mercedes have made his way back through in towards 11th place. The Finnish driver losing out just like Jardier did on the first lap there, and unable to maintain the position as they go through this very tight and twisty over climb of the hill. Trying to follow one another is very difficult through all of this. Let's go on board with and he tries to hold on to the back of the Mercedes Sebastian Krohn. Maybe it'll set something up. See, the Frenchman of Barrier has managed to escape a few car lengths away out front. Gaps have opened up in the top 10 as well, and that's a wide moment for Krohn. Pennant almost clipping the barrier on the exit of the dipper there. Does he think about dive towards Forest Elbow? No, you saw the back of the car getting a little bit loose there. How does he fare on the run down towards the chase? And the M4 we already saw had good straight line speed, but it was difficult to convert it. The trio of Polchuk, Gamble and Kreisner all in the battle of their own. Sorry, excuse me, it was Van den Einde leading that train, so it's going to get very, very manic as they head down towards the chase, then Pendleton towards the inside. Polachuk doing the same in the background, almost contact through the chase there, and the number 11 trying to steal the 11th place fall around the outside. Big drift there for the Finnish driver, but he does get it done. What about Van der Nijnder? He's held on to the position, as that's a white flag for Sean Tempest. I think he's lost something. Robin Schaefer has managed to make his way past Thomas Morant, who's lost out as well. Sean Tempest immediately already onto the back once again of Chrysler, as they are very close. At the front though, Florian Duakop 1.3 seconds ahead of Lucas Schubert. Jarnier though back onto good strong pace, 0.3 faster than Marco Bischoff last time around, and he may not have got the position on the German driver in the end last time out of Zolder, but this Honda is looking very good in race trim, and the Czech driver I'm sure will be eager to bring that one back. Ognordikov in the Bentley trying to see if he can do something about Dave Hardy in front of him in the M4. The German driver doing a fantastic job in the 27 car at the moment and keeping back. Oh, is that side by side with Jarnier and Marco Bischoff? Jarnier around the outside. That's going to be very difficult to do. Surely not. Almost into the barrier, but somehow they get through there cleanly. My goodness, I think Marco Bischoff must have locked up towards the cutting there, and this has allowed Soldatov to get involved in this one as well. And suddenly we have a three-way fight for P4 then. Jarnier almost running wide in towards the gravel there, and Soldatov is very much right there. That was so close. Brilliant driving from the pair of them there to get through cleanly. This track will bite you, and going side by side through the middle sector is terrifying. Korekis also putting pressure onto the Mercedes of Schubert now. Let's see, what is that pace difference down Conrad straight between the Honda and the Porsche. You see that speedo already going up. Oh, what's happened further down the order? Van der Nijnder has just lost a couple of positions, and Henrik Gamble going side by side with Polachuk, so we have to keep an eye on that one. But Jarnier trying to go around the outside through the chase and contact with Bischoff. Oh, and it's a huge moment. Jarnier into Bischoff, Bischoff into the wall, and it's spinning all the time. Jarnier across the chicane, and surely will have tremendous damage on that car. But Bischoff plummeting down the order then and falling down several positions, and massive damage to the reigning champion car. And is this a lifesaver potentially for Malinowski in this championship? Because that is a huge incident and very impactful. And Bischoff already into the pits. This won't count for his mandatory pit stop, so this really does compromise his race severely for the German driver. But I don't think I can look back on the replay, because we've already got action happening elsewhere. Florence and Vassner side by side on the exit through turn 1 as they climb up through. Look at this line of cars all the way up the hill. There's a battle that we're looking at. The two Audis close together. Vassner versus Schaefer, the two drivers both from LFM, trying to see if one can get past the other on the inside. They can't quite find the room to do it, but that is a huge moment. We haven't seen Bischoff and Jardier come together for quite a while, but my goodness, that was in very dramatic fashion. I'm sure there'll be words potentially going on between the pair of them further down the order. We've got... oh, that's a big moment into the wall. That's Backstrom in the Bentley, completely slamming into the concrete there, so that'll be heavy damage onto the side and front of that car, as that's not going to help him at all as they all fly through there. The Audi of Lima in front, almost catching the concrete wall again. But my goodness, all of these guys so close together, trying desperately to keep up with every battle that we have on circuit. Wide moment for Sean Tempest there. That's going to put him under some more pressure from the Mercedes of Florence behind, Chrysler in that white Mercedes, and he's got Florence all over his gearbox, and that's a yellow flag. Oh dear, big crash from Mellis on the exit of Forest Elbow. What on earth happened there for the Ferrari driver? Clips the barrier, catches the concrete. Does he collect anyone? Big evasive action there from Pennon to stay out of that one, but Mellis, the Italian, running a bit too wide, and that has cost him dearly. Igor still putting pressure onto Hardy, who's defending very, very well from the number 21 car and holding on to 6th place. What's going on between Gamble and Sebastian Krohn? I think Gamble may have just made a position, did he? I think that's, in fact, that's the timing board having a bit of a lie towards me. My goodness, this is what I expected around this amazing circuit. I expected a mixture between fantastic racing and carnage. This is what happens at Bathurst, and I wouldn't have it any other way. It keeps us on our toes, it keeps the drivers on their toes. What can the Bentley do anything about the BMW up the hill? Closing in the slipstream is Ognordikov in the 21 car, looking towards the inside, but surely too far back to make a move, and unable to make anything stick for the time being. Soldatov closing up to the back of Jardier. Then, of course, the Honda running wounded at the moment. So potentially a couple of positions happening soon. Vassner and Schaefer, I think, may have just swapped positions on the run up towards turn 2 there. And it was, by the looks of it, Vassner that lost out on that one. So Schaefer got that inside line. He got the run that he needed. And he moves up in towards 17th position. Looking back at the pointier end of the grid, Florian Duacop, fastest lap of the race, still the only man currently lapping in the 2 minutes. Number 8 car leads by 2.5 seconds. White flag for Igor then, and he's dropped back by the looks of it from the BMW. So did he have a moment on the exit of McPhillamys? And he did, in towards the gravel, keeps it all together, but that would have been a heart-in-mouth moment for the number 21 Bentley. And that gives Dave Hardy a little bit of breathing space as Valentine, the Frenchman, trying to close up to that battle in the background. Meanwhile, outside the top 10, we've still got all of these scraps as these trains of GT cars goes flying past our screen. And they all follow one another. I think Van den Einde a little bit lacking in straight line speed. I do actually need to check. Oh, that's a bit of a larger gap than it was a moment ago between Solotov and Jardier. What happened there? Closing, and that's why completely missed his braking point towards the chicane and did keep it, thankfully, on the tarmac, but losing time in the process. What's going on with this trio outside the top 10 of Chrysler, Tempest, and Florence? As that's a mistake for Van den Einde, maybe struggling a little bit in the Ferrari to keep it together. Of course, we know how demanding this circuit is, and as very useful. And oh, that's a big moment there. That was Chrysler on the exit, and now he may be a little bit vulnerable to Florence behind if the Mercedes can get the run up the hill towards turn 2. You can see the pink Mercedes closing all the time. Does he think about going towards the inside? He can't get there. Chrysler's going to defend that one, and that number 14 car is left in 16th place for the time being. And apparently Jardier only has 10 seconds of damage, only in inverted commas. Yeah, that is going to be a big chunk for him to be contending with, but at least his car is drivable. Bischoff, on the other hand, that was a pretty mangled car indeed. Now we've got Bjorn Bredin trying to chase the back of Janus Taknes in that Audi. It's gone board the front splitter of this BMW. Look at the undulation, and we climb over the mountain. The Audi almost in towards a concrete barrier, but that's how hard you've got to push around here if you want the extra pace. The Greek driver actually close up to the back of Suarez. We know there's damage on that Honda as well. So you go through the dipper then. Unable to do anything through here, just checking in. Correcus very close to the back of Schubert, but I don't think he quite has the straight line speed. The Mercedes absolutely rapid up the hill, down the hill. The Porsche exquisite in the corners, but right now Correcus unable to close in. But of course, this man still very much in the championship fight, and with Marco Bischoff having a very disastrous result today, this seriously could bring Correcus in towards championship contention. Massier potentially out of the picture, missing a round. Bischoff disaster today. So the man on your screens, he may not have won a race yet. He may not have been able to convert a pole position, but if he brings home another podium, then he could be right there in the fight with a few rounds left to go. So we'll have to keep an eye and see how all of that plays out. Ogrodkov again trying to put pressure onto Dave Hardy. The Aston Martin of Barrier has been slowly but surely getting involved in this one as well, and he's 7/10 adrift of this trio, but the BMW good enough straight line speed to hold back the number 21 car. But Aston Martin very quick up the hill, gained a huge amount of time there. As a actual fact, let's go on board with Valentine, number 5 car, as we witness these two scrapping their way up through the mountain. He'll be watching this with a great deal of interest. And this Aston Martin may be coming good around this circuit. Good straight line speed, huge confidence in the brakes. Igor really pushing the limits up towards the concrete. No such issues for the number 5 car that's on his tail, but just no room to make a move. Almost into the concrete again, and absolutely flirting with the edges of the limits that you can take around this circuit. Hardly looked like he got a little bit wonky down in towards the dipper, but he pulls it all together as they all stay line astern as they were. A little bit of a wiggle for Valentine through the exit there. Igor, the closest he's been in a while. Did he think about a dive towards Forest Elbow? I thought he was going to go for it for a moment there. I think Hardy thought he was going to as well. but he stays behind for the time being as they have the drag race once more. But look at the big bad Bentley, little bits of rubber banding between these cars, but I think there is a bit of a run for the 21 car. The 27 has been defending like a lion for the last few laps, but here comes the Bentley through the chase. They go, which way does he go, left or right? The answer's to the left, and it's a big dive there for Igor down the inside, and Bounty's trying to get involved in this one as well, and Hardy's going to lose 2 in 1 there, and he couldn't do anything about the Bentley, who finally makes his way through. The Frenchman capitalizes on that one and says thank you very much. And what about Florence? He's trying to make a move onto Chrysler. The 2 Mercedes scrapping for 15th position at the moment. It's allowed Lohan van den Einde to escape a little bit up the road, as again, defensive from Chrysler there, trying desperately to hold on to that one. He does for the time being. I think Valentine getting pretty cozy though already to the back of the Bentley up the hill then. Does he have enough straight line speed? I don't think he'll be able to do anything about it just yet. In actual fact, he's got the BMW of Hardy to contend with. Hardy looking towards the inside, Valentine aware of it and defends that inside line, so the German won't be able to do anything about that, but I think that scrap will be continuing for 6th place in just a moment. What about Lohan van den Einde? Oh, is that Polovchuk? Polovchuk into the wall, I think, through there in towards turn 2. Not sure what happened there. Just behind though, we've got side-by-side action with some of the other cars as all of my cameras go very wibbly-wobbly. Dennis Suarez losing out on the exit of turn 2. Bjorn Bredin getting through in all of that, so the wounded Honda losing positions further on in this race. And several cars losing out there, and it's just one of those things around this circuit. As soon as you go offline, there's so many corners that are dependent on the camber. We saw the Audi. Oh, that's a white flag out for Lohan van den Einde. Oh, no, it's very wide. Oh, can he get it back onto the tarmac? He does. Sean Tempest says thank you. Around the outside he goes in towards the dipper. Big moment there for the Ferrari driver, and I did say, and I was worried that the Ferrari, it might be glued to the circuit, but when it does start to get a little bit bumpy, we know how undrivable that car can get, and the Belgian driver unfortunately losing a position as a result of that. Now he has the pressure from Polovchuk just behind, who's trying to recover after that big moment in towards turn 2 there with this train a little bit more spaced out. Meanwhile, Robin Schaefer getting involved in this one. Chrysler actually close up to the back of that damaged BMW in front. Has he got enough straight line speed? And Mercedes, it's mighty with the V8 in the front of that car towards the inside before the chase. Oh, over the bump, you see how scary it is. Trying to go through there side by side into 21. Who's going to come out top of this? Sean Tempest off on the exit, and it's getting very busy in all of this. Lohan van den Einde is through. Sean Tempest dropping back Polovchuk, and we've got 2x2 on the run up towards Murray's corner. Sean Tempest has the number 23 around the outside of him. Florence trying to go around the outside. Van den Einde are off just in front. Tempest is going to lose out to Polovchuk on the exit there. What about Chrysler behind? He's now got Florence and Schaefer to worry about in all of this as well. Really could do with a different camera angle. Mercedes off Florence all the way around the outside, but onto the grass, onto the exit of Hell corner. And I think that on the drag race up the hill, that's going to lose him momentum, but it's still a big drag race between these two side by side. Florence on the inside line, maybe being even pushed along for Robin Schaefer, who's got a brilliant view on the run up towards top of the hill. Tom Hardy has got up to 7th place, but looks up in front of the Frenchman. Florence through, Schaefer trying to follow him through as well, up in towards turn 2, side by side between the Mercedes and the Audi now, and around the outside Schaefer trying to go with the number 3 car, but the Mercedes fighting back on the inside, and he will reclaim that position, so he loses 1 in the end. But my goodness, amazing stuff. Also, we'll see if we can catch it. It was a swapping of position between Valentine and Hardy there. Oh, Hardy was almost very close to the back of Igor in that Bentley just in front. But my goodness, Frenchman seeming, I think, must have lost that through turn 2 by the looks of it. And Valentine in that number 5 car was trying to look up the inside there in the middle of that sector. That's a very scary place to go. Also, we've got a query about the standings between Pendon and Gamble. So it is Nico Pendon in front of Henrik Gamble. It is possible that the leaderboard had a bit of a wobbly moment and those two may have swapped around, but it is the Finnish driver in 9th place with the German and the lead K Kramer Racing esports car in the 10th place. Meanwhile, Valentine very close up to the back once again of Hardy, just in front of him. Dave Hardy in the 27 car, and the BMW has done a great job so far, as I think Tempest is very busy once again, almost 3 wide in towards the final corner. Then 23 car has contact with Sean Tempest, who's around, and he's collecting Florence. That's Chrysler into the wall as well, and it's Robin Schaefer who says thank you very much and takes 3 positions in 1 there. Florence still losing out. All of this, I think Vassner may be able to get around the outside of him in towards turn 1 as well, is he? Or is he going to get shoved towards the grass? Still side by side between those two. Thomas Moran now has a great view of all of this, side by side in front between the 2 Mercedes and the 2 Audis just behind, as they're all climbing up towards turn 2 again. It's absolute chaos here at Bathurst, and we love every second of it. Who's going to come out on top? Florence around the outside, but we know that line isn't going to work out very nicely. Chrysler down the inside. Oh, and Florence, has he made it work? And he has. Brilliant stuff from the big Mercedes. Chrysler trying to fight back on the exit there, and that's Thomas Moran's just behind as well. Bjorn Brennan going around the outside in towards turn 4. Chrysler around the outside holds on to that position. Yellow flags up ahead. Big crash with Igor Narodkov, and he's parked in the middle of the circuit. Sebastian Krohn completely caught blindsided over the crest there. What on earth happened there? I think there was contact between himself and Hardy. Valentine having to take evasive action and all that as well, and Sebastian Krohn nowhere to go. And he does, I think, the rest of the grid a little bit of a favour there in all of that, because that sent the Bentley offline, so I don't think anyone else got collected in all of that, but that's very tricky, as everyone, that's Moran's, Bredin and Janice all trying to filter on through there, but that's a very wounded Mercedes of Crow that's continued to cause a little bit of havoc. That's one of the BMWs into the wall. We've got a chunk of damage there around the outside. That's a big moment for the Audi driver. That was Andre Bayer. Boris Schulk capitalises on all of that, and all chaos takes place in the middle of the mountain. And my goodness, didn't quite exactly see how that contact took place, but the what came out of it, as Polovchuk has lost the position to Robin Schaefer and all of that, so there was a drag race, I think. The Audi must have come from very far back then. There's a lot of damage on Polovchuk's car, and Robin Schaefer took that position and gets himself up into 11th place. But my goodness, so bit of a recap on everything that we've just seen, as the number 16 car of Sebastian Krohn limping his way to the pit lane then, as Igor a bit further back. His car doesn't seem to be quite so heavily damaged, but undoubtedly took a hell of a whack on the back of that car through Skyline. But right now then, Florian Duicop leads by 4.5 seconds over Schubert. Grantus Korekis still desperately always what's going on there, but again, Polovchuk losing another position, so very wounded in this BMW, but looks of it, Florence up into 12th place. Oh, Bjorn Brennan into the wall. The BMW, heavy crash up towards turn 2. That was side by side with Moran to contact on the entry there, and the pink Audi of Moran also going into the concrete. And the number 30 car, heavy damage there, and another incident falling victim on the mountain as they all wind their way up through the hill once more. This train of cars, Bjorn Brennan fighting back as best he can. Sean Tempest capitalising on that white flag for Polovchuk, and Chrysler just a little bit up ahead. Sasha Vassner trying to go side by side towards the dip, but surely not. The Audi backs out of that one, I think wisely so, because that is never going to end all too well in that. But my goodness, we're trying to see if we can have a bit of a recap of everything that's taken place so far, but the action is just relentless, and I don't think I'm going to get a break anytime soon, because Polovchuk going very slow. Valentine Barrier trying to go around the outside of Hardy in towards the chase. The BMW holds strong, but what's the Aston like on the brakes? It's a big dive from the Frenchman. Can he get it stopped? And he does. Amazing move there from the number 5 car. And Henrik Gamble, Nico Penman involved in all of this as well. Henrik Gamble has got in front of the BMW. We didn't see how that happened, and now it's the actual fan, no, excuse me, that is Marco Bischoff. He's a lap down. Oh, that's got very busy, because Hardy's now lost a position to Nico Pennanen. The disaster there. The German driver, unusually, we never see him in this sort of position. Marco Bischoff, the red Porsche on your screen, a lap down after that incident earlier on in the race there, and causing a bit of havoc for his fellow German. Henrik Gamble a bit further back in the order. And Dave Hardy losing 2 positions there. Jonathan Clifford and Hillhorse also going toe-to-toe on the run in towards turn 23, I do believe. We've also got the likes of Andre Bayer, I think, who's in a bit of a scrap. That's a wide moment for Lima on the exit of turn 1. I think he'll be uncontested. on the run up to turn 2, though. Kreisner, though, big moment for the Mercedes. What happened to the German driver? He was trying to make a move around the outside of Polovchuk. Oh, very similar contact. Oh, and huge damage on the front of that car. So that is going to be a very difficult car, and he's limping his way through that first section. I think that may be a retirement to the pits as well, and it is. That's very unfortunate there for the Mercedes driver. We've got Florence putting Robin Schaefer under some pressure as well, who's come flying through the field with all of the action that has taken place. Polovchuk versus Janis Taxnis in the Audi also taking place as well. Oh, that's a scary moment inside the cockpit on that car. Brings out the white flag for a moment, but just about keeps everything under control. And then we've got this little trio scrap outside of the top 15. Inside that top 20 series of positions, and then we have Vaxstrom, Yukas and Bredin with heavy damage on that car. And we've got James Rolfe, a man that started in 35th. He's gained 5 positions in this race overall in all of that, capitalising on the chaos and misfortune of some of these cars. And I think Vaxstrom may be in a position to make a move down towards the chase. Is he side by side? In actual fact, we've also got a scrap going on further down. If I can catch it on the camera, Taxnis has outdragged the BMW. What about the Bentley versus BMW of Tempest? And he's lost out as well. So the Bentley makes his way up into 26th position. That was a wide moment for one of the drivers, Kingston and Hillhorse, going side by side on the run up to turn 23. What happened there for Yukas? Just went very deep under braking there, and then somebody, I think, has gone across the chicane. Yeah, it was the white BMW of Bjorn Bredin that had that moment. Lima and Drexel now side by side through turn 1. On the climb up towards turn 2, then will the Audi have enough grunt to contend with the BMW, who's seen these cars be very, very quick? But it does look like the Audi has enough to hold off the German outfit for the time being. Meanwhile, Florence and Schaefer continuing to scrap. Also, last time round, both Mercedes at the front of the field in the 2-minute times. Very close times between Florian Duakop and Lucas Schubert. Neither of those drivers put a foot wrong so far in this race. Karekas has dropped away from those drivers, and Jardier with the damage on his car, 7 seconds behind the podium spot. But crucially, has got himself a bit of breathing space between himself and Soldatov. And my goodness, in the opening half an hour, we've still got 2/3 of this race left to go. And there's been carnage and chaos from the very start. So we are still in for a treat. No rain on the horizon as of yet. But still potentially possible, and could cause all sorts of chaos depending on the way it plays into effect with the mandatory pit stop window. So let's have a bit of a catch-up as to what's happened in this race. Duakop led from the start. Schubert maintained his second place spot. Karekas put him under pressure for a while, but has struggled. Jardier, huge moment between himself and Bischoff. Thomas Morant side by side with Polovchuk, and the BMW loses another position, struggling a lot for straight line speed at the moment. Same goes for Sean Tempest, who has just lost out to Roman Yukas in another one of the BMWs. So those two swapping position. Bjorn Bredin may be able to get involved in this in just a moment as well. Some of those wounded cars will be hoping that that pit window comes sooner rather than later. As Max Florence again trying to put pressure onto Robin Schaefer. Schaefer defending that inside line up towards turn 2. He has to, because the Mercedes so quick on the run up the hill, trying to go around the outside. He made it work around the outside before, but he needs to be a lot more alongside if he is going to make that one stick. So Max Florence stays in 12th position for the time being. And then we have this trio battling outside top 10. That's Sean Tempest. Oh, on the inside of Bjorn Bredin. Bjorn Bredin almost into the concrete. Very cosy between the two BMWs there. And that's a yellow flag. And Bischoff's off again. Disaster. Disaster for the championship leader. And surely that's just made an irrecoverable race even worse. Losing over the crest of Skyline. Hardy does well to take his evasive action. So does his teammate Henrik Gamble. And now the Porsche, the reigning champion. An absolute disaster of a day. Wide moments for the other cars over Skyline as they approached him there. And Bischoff falling down the order even further, losing track time. Hasn't retired to the pit, so I'm not sure if he is going to try to continue going. White flags out for some of these other cars. I think that's as they're passing Bischoff. The German driver has got going again. I think he may have made a bit of extra contact with the wall, but this is a rare and disastrous day. The man that is usually so unflappable, he was put under so much pressure last time out at Zolder. Big contact between himself and Jardier this week here at Bathurst, and then a mistake made all by himself, maybe trying to push too hard to try to recover something from this race. Meanwhile, Suarez losing out to Polachuk, I think, or maybe trying to make a move on Polachuk. Both of these cars very wounded. Klaus Petrol, though, trying to make something stick. He looks left, he looks right. The Honda defends the inside line in towards Murray's corner, then the 35, trying to go around the outside, but he can't make anything stick just yet. Both of these cars in front of him are running damage. You see Jonathan Clifford trying to go side by side in the background as well. We ride on board the rear diffuser of the Honda of Suarez, number 17 car in 17th position. And all of these drivers absolutely nose to tail, dropping back just a little bit for the first time is the BMW. What about Kingston, though? It's all getting busy on the run up the hill. Suarez fought back on the run up. Huge torque in the Honda. Around the outside he goes. Can he do it like Florence did earlier on? And he does. Sweeps around the outside of Polachuk now, who's got Petrol all for company just behind him. And they weave their way up towards turn 4. Then they stay as they were. What's going on between Bjorn Bredin and Sean Tempest? I think those two have just swapped around, and Bjorn Bredin does get it done this time. He's down the inside and he makes that one stick in the end. But my goodness, huge busy action between these guys. Kingston all over the back of Hillhorse in front of him. Let's go on board the Aston Martin through McPhillamy Park. They go in towards Skyline. Let's see as they all fly down the hill. Oh, that might have been a little bit of contact, I'm not sure, for the Audi of Steen in front of him, the 29 car. So busy between these cars. I think Klaus might be able to make a move on Pavlo just up ahead. You see those two BMWs scrapping. I think let's head on board the rear diffuser of Pavlo. We know he's been struggling for straight line speed, and I think it's going to be a fairly easy move in the end. Oh, we'll have to keep an eye also on Solstad versus Jarnier, because that's got very close. But here goes the BMW of Klaus Petrol down the inside in towards the chase. I don't think there's anything that Pavlo can do. In actual fact, he may have Jonathan Clifford to worry about. Oh, that was wiggling under the brakes in towards turn 21 there. That's a wide moment for Kingston, who's off in towards the grass. Boris Schulk is going to get through. Andre Bayer gets through. Lima gets through as well. Kingston does keep it pointing in the right direction in the end, and loses another couple of positions in the process, to 5 positions lost after that mistake. But look at this, near the front end of the field. I said Jardier had some breathing space. Not anymore, he doesn't, because Soldatov in that BMW, the number 6 car, all over the gearbox of the wounded Honda. And whilst Konstantin may not have the outright raw pace right now between these cars, there is a wounded Honda in front of them, maybe struggling to keep his tyres alive at this stage in the race, and the BMW is no slouch relative to the Honda whatsoever, and with a good slipstream he can make something stick. What's going on between Roman Yukas and Kingston on the run up towards turn 2? Aston Martin on the inside, the BMW won't be able to make that one stick. What about Drexler alongside Lima? Backs out of that one on the run up towards turn 4. The Portuguese driver coming out on top in all of that. Florence all over the back of the Audi of Robin Schaefer. Soldatov has dropped back to a second now, so I think must have had a very awkward run through Forest Elbow potentially for that gap to open up. Also, there was the process of trying to see if we can have a look at the positions. Oh, that's a yellow flag for the Bentley of Vaxstrom. Does he stay out of everyone's way? I think he does. You see, he was very close to the gearbox. BMW already just completely let go on the rear. There's the weight, or lack of, on the rear axle of that number 28 car, and that just caught him off guard for a moment, manages to gather it up, which in such a tight and twisty section is a very difficult thing to do. I am desperately, in the meantime of all of this action, trying to see if I can work out if we can get a graphic up for the positions gained. I think there we go. So we can. So let's have a bit of a look. We'll have to see in a moment, I think, because we've got Jonathan Clifford going flying past in the Lamborghini on Polachuk, and now Polachuk defending hard from the Audi behind. I think there may be a bit of flashing of the lights from Hillhorse there, but we know that Pavlo is running very wounded indeed. I think the Audi is going to get a good run out of turn 22. Does he think about dive towards Murray's into 23? He can't. But these two These three, actual fact, it's about 7, realistically, with this train of cars. My goodness, all absolutely nose to tail at the moment, but I will show you the rest of the leaderboard in just a minute. Mellis has come into the pits. I'm not sure what that would be for, because the pit window has not opened up yet, so that's not for his mandatory pit stop, so that won't count. So maybe big damage on that car. I'm not sure if he had a moment. Here comes the Audi of Hillhorse around the outside of the BMW, and I don't think there's anything that Pavlo can do. He's got Andre Bayer in his rearview mirror as well, filling up all of that, both digital display and the mirror inside the cockpit with that white Audi nose. But Pavlo, oh, that's a big move for Clifford! Into the concrete it goes, locking up the brakes on the run towards turn 4, and now it gets very busy again because Hillhorse has nowhere to go in this sector. But that Lamborghini, I think he clipped the wall. I don't think he hit it all too hard, and that was someone else. That was Boris Short, getting very dangerous with the concrete barriers again. As look, we've got about 8 cars all in a single train through all of this, all slaloming side to side on the run down in towards the dip, and now they go. But Jonathan Clifford may be running a little bit wounded in all of that, and I think we're going to have another drag race. We have white flag for Paolo for just a moment, and I don't think anything all too significant. Kingston, does he think about a dive towards the inside of Forest Elbow onto Drexler in front of me? He doesn't. But what about the battle at the pointy end of this train? Clifford has escaped for a moment, but it's Andre Bayer that is now putting pressure onto Pavlo, who I think may be a little bit defenseless from the power of the Audi, maybe not the rocket ship it used to be. Oh, he's on the grass though, and Pavlo already slotting in behind, and now he's got Boris Schulk for company. The Aston Martin looks towards the outside, does he? Oh, is he trying to find the line under the brakes? But Pavlo parks it in the middle of the circuit then. And Sean Tempest has also lost a position. That car running wounded as well. Dennis Suarez, a wounded Honda, comes in to the pits. Then a few drivers taking opportunity of all of this. So does Polovchuk, so does Kingston, and surprisingly, I think Jardier may have gone past at a slightly awkward moment and was unable to do anything about that, so he will probably dive to the pits on the next lap, and we'll be looking to do that very swiftly because only 4 tenths again between himself and Soldersov, so nothing separating those two drivers. But there you go, you can see the pointier end of the standings now. So the top 4 as they were, but then it all changes. Soldersov up 1, Valentine up 5, Pendon up 10 positions. Amazing stuff from him. Not the biggest mover though. We've got Schaefer on 12, Taxnis on 13, Hillhorse and Clifford on 13-12. Boris Schulk up 14 positions. So huge gains for certain drivers in this race. And that just shows you, if you can keep yourself out of trouble and don't let the mountain bite you, then, and also a little bit of luck has to come with that yourself as well, because even if you're on the straight and narrow, but someone else makes a mistake, as we've already seen. Oh, speaking of which, Boris Schulk makes a mistake on the exit of McPhillamy Park. He only loses 1 position, and who is that just retired to the pits? I saw a yellow flag come out at the dipper, I think. Who was that for? I'm not sure who that was for, unfortunately, but Boris, after being the biggest mover, we still now the equal greatest mover in the field, but being caught out from the high demands around this circuit. Florence again has been locked onto the gearbox of the Audi of Schaefer in front of him, but still is unable to do anything about him. What about Hardy versus Penninan? And is Penninan around the outside? Oh, that's going to get awkward because Sean Tempest on the exit of the pit lane there. Henry Gamble's in company of all of this as well. Penninan, the Finnish driver, leads then just in front of Hardy, who's desperately trying to come back on the charge up towards turn 2. The BMW, can he do anything around the outside? I'm not sure if he can, as we've got a lot of moving around further down the order, but it is Penninan that is going to hold on to that one by the looks of it. But Henry Gamble trying to go around the outside, can't do anything about that there, surely can't find room. Oh, that's a big wiggle lock up for himself on the run towards turn 4. But the German driver, quick reactions and immediately locked back onto the gearbox of the BMW in front. But Pendon gains another position. Amazing opening stint for himself. Still no rain on the horizon, but we could have a surprise near the end of this race. As Florence again very close to the back of Robin Schaefer, but through this section of the circuit, it's absolutely impossible to do anything as he almost looks towards the inside of the dipper. Cannot make anything stick through there. That is going to be very, very difficult as more of our drivers have come into the pit. Soldatov close up to the back of Jardier. Now, surely, does Jardier come into the pits now? Does he gamble hoping for dry weather? He doesn't. So he is conscious of the tyre wear around this circuit, and he doesn't want to get himself into a compromised position. Also, maybe aware that we could have changeable conditions later on, and may want to adjust his pressures accordingly for all of our Florence. Again, unable to do anything about Schaefer. Good straight line speed in the Audi in front of him that has been able to hold that Mercedes back for a very long time. Gamble into the pits then was all over the back of Dave Hardy, who is still close to the gearbox of Nico Pennon and still hasn't let go of 7th place in all of this just yet. What about Andre Bayer, who's putting pressure onto Jonathan Clifford? If the camera would wrap around eventually, there we go, Audi down the inside of the American driver now, and that turns it towards the outside at turn 22 onto the exit curb. Hillhorse watching with a great deal of interest through all of this. A Lamborghini on the outside now in towards Murray's. Limos, contact on the entry there, and Jonathan Clifford off on the entry, and does he keep it out of the barrier? He does, but he will not be happy about that one whatsoever. See if we can catch what was going on between those two. So if we go on board with, in actual fact, let's go on board perhaps with Jonathan Clifford and see that Lamborghini still side by side with the Audi, and it's just making its way alongside there. Clifford stays in a straight line, and there's just left no room whatsoever, and it's big contact between those two on the entry to the braking zone. Meanwhile, Hillhorse has managed to get past in all of this as I'm trying desperately, if we can, to catch it, and I think he's just out-dragged him up towards turn 2. Went a little bit wide on the exit there, but did manage to put it up in time. So Steen goes up into 14th place, although a few drivers doing their pit stops. Jardier still not one of them. Soldatov only a couple of tenths behind these two, well clear of Valentin the Frenchman in 6th place, 15 seconds between them. And it's Soldatov actually that's going to go into pit. So he's going for the undercut then. He feels he can keep the tyres alive. He's hoping for dry conditions to the end. And with Jardier running around with damage on that car, that BMW may be able to make the strategy work. Thomas Morant and Alex Kingston were close on the exit of the pit lane there. I think also Bjorn Bredin losing out to Vaxstrom as Drexler brought out the white flag for a moment. I think that was him actually slowing down. That was for Grantas Correctus. You can see that's blue and yellow Porsche. We get another great series of camera shots through there. Damage on the front of that car. Where is Solstov going to emerge? We'll have to keep an eye on him. And also, just out of interest, Marco Bischoff, despite the disaster he is having today, still out on circuit. Because, who knows, DNF you do get 0 points, but the way that the point system works in this race, it is possible to still score just a few points in these lower positions. And you never know what's going to happen ahead of you. This is why, ahead of you in the calendar, I mean, and it's why it's always good to soldier on even in these moments. And now this is not what Soldatov wanted, because he's come out directly alongside Hillhorse and who's trying to out-drag him up towards turn 2, and I don't think the BMW is going to have any choice here, and that's a disaster for the undercut strategy. Soldatov flashing his lights there, but this is 4th position, so the number 6 car, there is nothing that he can do about that. Hillhorse is well within his rights to hold on to that position, but that is not going to help the number 6 car out whatsoever. I would imagine he would get past pretty swiftly, and he'll be hoping to do it on the next run down the Conrod Straight, but that helps out Jardier a lot in terms of making this other strategy work. Also, Lucas Schubert has just come into the pit, so does Caracas. So those two drivers deciding to go for that now. So let's go on board with Soldatov as he tries to reel in the Audi in front of him. See, flying through the dipper there. Gotta be so careful. Jardier still not pitting, does not want to switch off these tyres too early. When you consider the damage he has on that car, he is only 7 tenths adrift of the times from Florian Duicot, which is still very impressive when you consider what those cars have been through. Also swapping a position between Clifford and Backstrom on the exit of the pit lane. What can Soldatov do? On the run down towards the chase. Hillhorse, here's the onboard from the diffuser of the Audi. Through the chase they go. The Audi takes the inside line, but not enough because it's a big dive and I've clicked on the wrong car. But it's the M4 down the inside of chicane. Dispatches of the Audi. Did exactly what he needed to do. Spotted his braking point and gets himself into clean air. And Steen dives into the pits himself now. And after a mega stint from the German driver, the Audi, the number 29 car, comes into the pits. Meanwhile, action heating up once again between Hardy and Penninent. Currently now battling for a podium position. Of course, the likes of Korekis and Schubert have pitted ahead of them. But these two, they've been scrapping for quite a while. Great stuff from the pair of them. And after it all got a little bit busy at certain points in this race for some of these drivers, it's just calmed down for a brief moment, which I'm sure for some of these guys will be a bit of a relief. But I think Penninent and Hardy are still going to be locking horns for the next few laps. And this Bathurst race circuit has proven to be very tricky to get around so far. Penninent and Hardy taking very different lines through there, and you can see Penninent really went for the wide line, carrying the speed out on the exit. Hardy trying to use the camber on the inside to drag his way through, but I don't think it quite works out in the way that he would have wanted. Meanwhile, Hillhorst just coming out of the pits now, and that is Drexler that is coming out of there. Coming out of turn 1, and he's about a second adrift or so of the Audi. So the Audi comes out in 21st position, but that will all shuffle again once they do their pit stops. Now, Penninent in to the pits, Florian Duacomp into the pits as well. Jardier still staying out. Robin Schaefer into the pits, so Jardier really stretching this stint out. I'd be very interested if he decides not to repair the damage as well. Paolo Lima brought out white flag a moment ago. What's going on between Roman Yukas and Andre Beyer? Very close on the run towards 21 and 22. But Andre Beyer going to bring an end to that fight. Doesn't want to lose any time scrapping with another car, so decides to come into the pits. 10 minutes left on the pit window, so still some flexibility for these guys. No sign of rain just yet. And if there is going to be rain, it is getting smaller and smaller for the duration, so these guys will be very much optimized for the dry. Drexler now very close to the back of Steen in the 29 car, who might be trying to get those tyres up to pressure and temperature. We know Drexler still seems to be suffering with a bit of damage, at least visibly, on the front of that car. You see just a bit too far adrift to do anything, though, for the time being. And the Audi does hold on to that position. Where has Florian emerged? Oh my goodness, look at the gap difference. Schubert only about a second and a half now behind the race leader. That gap was about 5 seconds previously. Jardier finally comes into the pits. I have to keep an eye on how that plays out between him and Soldatov, but I don't know who had a poor time there as Paolo Lima and Andre Beyer. I think Andre Beyer may have had a terrible exit out of Hell Corner there. I don't think he'll be under pressure from Boris on the exit. Oh, can't quite catch him, unfortunately. A bit too far back to see what happened there. The number 31 car dropping down to 19th position there. But my goodness, that is far closer between the two Mercedes at the front of the field, as Vassner also comes into the pits now. Jardier still up on the jacks at the moment. Andre Beyer under huge amounts of pressure from the Aston Martin of Boris Schulk, flying through our screen up against the concrete, absolutely glued to the back of this Audi. Here's the diffuser angle, looking back at that Aston Martin that is looking very planted through this sector, more planted than it was earlier. I will have to check out with our leaders though, because Schubert is within a second of Florian Duacomp. Not close enough to make a move at the moment, and not closer than these two just yet. But it is getting very busy between these guys. Also, big difference here. Jardier has come out many seconds behind Soldier, so I think that's a combination of tyres and potentially damage. But look at this, Schubert and Florian Duacop, only a few tenths between them. So that is a battle heating up in the making. Borishow towards the inside, towards the chase. Can the Aston Martin now go around the outside into 21? Squeezed is he on the entry to the braking zone, trying to keep his nose in there, but he can't quite for the time being. Drexler close up to the back of some of these guys as well, swapping of positions actually. Up in front, now on the exit of the pits, and now Lohan van der Linde trying to go around the outside in towards turn 2. We know it's such a difficult move to make. Can the Ferrari driver do? I'm not sure he's got enough of his car alongside. A little bit of contact with his fellow German on the run in there. Van der Linde has to stay in 16th position for the time being after all of that. Gap between Florian and Luca has opened up back to a second in all of that. Messy exit for the Audi there. Van der Linde all over the gearbox once again. Let's get another diffuser angle because it is a glorious one. And see that Ferrari has just dropped back just a little bit. He was absolutely nose to tail with the Audi a moment ago. And hear those tyres just squeaking a little bit. Screeching rather. It's generally the conventional way of describing that. As they fire their way through that section, just the changes and undulations so quick. Drexler has got... Who is that he has for company? He was right on the back of Hilhorst. And then he's got Sebastian Krohn, who is a lap down behind him. We saw Sebastian Krohn have big issues earlier on. Thomas Morant in a bit of a scrap with Alex Kingston. White flag briefly out for James Rolfe, who goes into the pits. Only 5 minutes left to go on the pit window timer. But I think Jardier has repaired the damage because he is about 13 seconds behind Soldatov after all of that. So I think he must have repaired that, and he had a much slower outlap as well. Meanwhile, Van der Linde still glued to the back of the Audi of Sasha Vassner in front of him. But we know that car as Soldatov, I think, has just fired his way past the BMW of Klaus, who in actual fact gets out of the way on the run up the mountain. So I'm sure the number 6 car of Soldatov will be saying thank you very much, and now charges off ahead to trying to see if he can make his way anywhere towards the top 4. 10 seconds separates himself and Grantis Korekis, who is currently in a little bit of a lonely top 4 spot. These guys will all shift up the order once this man, Dave Hardy, comes into the pits, leaving it as late as he possibly dares. He was scrapping with Nico Pennanen previously, so we'll see how that emerges. James Rolfe just coming out of the pits now and should stay ahead of Vaxstrom in all of that. Jan Drexler battling with Hilhorst a bit further up the order. And speaking of Pennan, he's also coming under some pressure from Henrik Gamble as well. Only 3 tenths separating those 2 cars, but we know how difficult it is going to be for the Porsche to make a move, because the straight line speed advantage definitely in favour of the BMW. But look at Drexler, absolutely glued to the rear of the Audi, almost pushing him along as they go through the crest into McPhillamy, and then into Skyline they go. But just absolutely nowhere to go through that sector. We saw Jardier and Bischoff going side by side on the run up the hill. They made that one work for a bit, though unfortunately it didn't quite fare as well later on the side by side action we had between them on the run towards the chase. Seeing Bischoff going into one of the most violent spins that I've ever seen, and Jardier getting heavy damage on his car and dampening his hopes of a podium, certainly of a race win. Florian has got himself into a bit of a groove once again and has opened up the gap to about 1.7 seconds. This is Henrik Gamble versus Nico Pennan, still unable to do anything about the Finnish driver in front. Just about has enough of a straight line speed advantage as Thomas Morant makes his way past Alex Kingston, who now I think is that's not full position. That is Sebastian Krohn, who is a lap down. So let's see what happens with Alex Kingston here. Morant has come from very, very far away. Look at the absolute huge speed advantage for this pink Audi. Was this just a pure dive down towards the turn 21? I think it might have been. And if it was, that is an absolutely huge send. Kingston actually missed his braking point. And Thomas Moran, a huge amount of distance gained on the back stretch there, and ends up getting the position as a result. We've got a couple of white flags out for Tempest and Sebastian Krohn. I think that is them letting by some of our cars on the lead lap. Andre Bayer and Roman Yukas pretty close to one another on circuit up the hill at the moment, as well as the leaderboard has a bit of a flurry of updates there. Jonathan Vackstrom also close to the back of the pink Aston Martin in front of him, as Ogrodnikov has he just come into the pits? Or has he been there a while? I'm not quite sure. I felt like I saw something flash up there, but that could be a lie. Dave Hardy has finally come into the pits, and it'll be very interesting to see whereabouts he comes out relative to Nico Pendant and Henrik Gamble. These two coming through the final corner now. Hardy has just got underway then. So let's see, let's go on board with the BMW. You can hear those cars rattling their way past around the outside. There they go. So Hardy, much fresher tyres on board this car, and Nico Penningen very much under pressure from Henrik Gamble, so that may allow the German driver to close back in on these two very quickly. And Gamble must be so frustrating in this Porsche, that close in the slipstream, and he just cannot do anything about the BMW in front of him, so has to stay behind for the time being. But right now, Pendant seeming a little bit of a bottleneck in this 7th place position, and Hardy having shown great pace throughout this race, maybe able to make a move on Gamble as a result, because he just cannot quite seem to unleash his pace that he has in that Porsche. Andre Bayer and Boris Schulk, and that is the pit window over and done with, so everyone has done their pit stops now, and in 30 minutes time we still have dry running, so it looks less and less likely that we will have any rain, which is a little bit of a shame. But my goodness, this race has not been short of action whatsoever so far in all of this. Andre Bayer trying to put some pressure onto the BMW of Yukas in front of him. Same goes for Bjorn Bredin, who lapped very quickly relative to Kingston last time around. He's gone board the front splitter of this BMW, and it's a big moment for the Aston Martin on the exit of turn 4. Bjorn has to back out of the throttle there in order to not make contact with the British driver. So thankfully, don't come together in all of that, but that got very close between those two, and a big moment for the Aston Martin. Henrik Gamble, again, so close to Nico Pendant in front, but just doesn't have the momentum that he needs in order to make a move. We'll have the next bundle of drag races on the run down towards the chase in just a moment. Drexler's dropped a little bit back in this middle sector. He's got Thomas Morant closing in for company as well, so he needs to be wary of that bright pink Audi. I'm sure that one's showing up in his mirrors very easily and dramatically, so be all too aware. What about this battle between Kingston and Bjorn Bredin now? Bredin, really huge run in that BMW towards the inside. He goes in towards a chase side by side. We've seen it go wrong before into here, and Kingston, I think, backs out of that one and lets the BMW go through. We also saw a white flag a moment ago for Andre Bayer. Just seeing if there was anything there. No, that was just a leaderboard having a bit of a fandango moment, so he stays as he was. Drexler and Morant, though, have closed up to one another, so we've got a bit of a three-way fight for 20th position. Henrik Gamble still very close to the pack, absolutely glued to back. See how much more confidence he's got over the hill relative to Pendant, and carries so much more speed. Has got to be careful not to carry too much, though, through McPhillamy Park. Very drifty moments for Pendant in front of him. That's not what you want to see if you're in the cockpit of the BMW, and you also don't want to see it if you're in the cockpit of this Porsche, because if he loses it, you do not have anywhere to go but staying very tight to that inside line. But here we go. The run down towards the hill, bottom of the hill, and Nico Pendant in that BMW. See, the gap just does not change. The gap just does not change. Now the slipstream starts to just become a little bit effective, but I don't think it's enough unless Gamble goes for a huge dive in actual fact, I think has a little bit of a lift to the braking zone as well. Wants to make sure he doesn't run into the back, as Thomas Morant actually got very close to the back of Drexler a moment ago, but goes wide through the dipper, so I don't think he would be able to make a move unless he has got some extra rocket ship power. That was a bit of a mistake actually for the BMW of Drexler, so we saw how far Morant came from before when he dived towards the inside of Kingston, but I think that Aston Martin is suffering with a chunk of damage, but Drexler can see the front of the BMW equally a bit wounded is that car. I don't know if he's going to be able to keep the number 9 back for too long. He does for the time being, has enough in the tank for now. But that bright pink Audi does look like it is in a bit of a better position in this race to make an overtake, closing in into the final half an hour, and it's been non-stop action all the way throughout. And it does look like we're going to have dry running all the way to the end. Still 0.4 of a second between Gamble and Penland, and also crucially back up to almost 3 seconds between Duacop and Schubert. So those gaps have opened up a bit. Grant correct, because only 2.5 seconds actually adrift of Schubert. So very good pace in the Porsche. Andre Baer, though, for the first time in a while, gets a good run onto Yukas in front of him, but I don't think he's got the torque quite in the Audi. The V10 screaming behind him to go on board inside the cockpit on that car. Hear the tone, all 10 cylinders in this German beast. It was an absolute monster in a straight line a few months ago, and it's still pretty handy around certain circuits, but not quite as competitive as it was at one point. And a tricky car to sometimes extract pace out of. Also, notably, on that tussle for 7th place between Gamble and Penland, still close between them. Penland almost thinking about going towards a defensive line on the inside there, but didn't need to in the end. But look at this man on board the diffuser of Henrik Gamble. That green and a black BMW of Dave Hardy is just closing in little by little. And he took a few tenths out on the last lap. What is it this time around? 6 tenths was the advantage to the BMW. So those fresh tyres may be working very nicely, because Gamble has not been able to unleash his pace. Absolutely glued to the back of Nico Penland, has got that Porsche absolutely filling up his diffuser, his mirrors, you name it. But the Porsche just does not quite have the pace to close in. Meanwhile, Dave Hardy closing in all the time in this 27 car. Gap down to a second now, and he is taking time hand over fist out of these two, and he has a car that could have some potential. Gamble almost maybe in a position to make a move up towards turn 4, but it's so difficult through there, and I think Hardy might actually be on to make a move, potentially down Conrad straight on the very next occasion, because he is closing rapidly through this next sector. The tyres on these cars that have pitted a bit earlier struggling the demands of the mountain, taking every bit of tread that they have, and that tyre wall is going to be getting thinner and thinner, as see Penland almost having a huge bobble and very hard on the brakes on the entry to the dipper. Then I think had to scrub off a lot of speed to get that one stopped as they fly through there once more. Hardy has dropped back a little bit. Oh, yellow flag for Vassner. Yellow flag for Vassner further down. The order was happened there to the Audi driver. Looks like it was an unforced error for the German. Was in 12th position in the number 13 car. Comes over the crest, stays out of the concrete there. What happens as he goes through his next series of dips, flirting with the track limits? I think it's going to be as he goes into McPhillamy. You see wide on the entry there, runs out of room, clobbers the curb. Does he keep out of the concrete? And he does, just about. But that is a big moment for the Audi driver, but thankfully keeps it all together. Also, Hardy, I think, got pretty close up to the back of these guys. Yeah, went deep on the brakes in towards turn 21 there, and has lost a bit of time, but those tyres still going to be much better than the two cars in front of him. So I imagine he will be pushing those guys very hard once again, no pun intended in all of that. Further down the order, Thomas Morant tried to put a charge onto the BMW in front of him on Drexler. This is a much better run than he had before. We saw how deep he was on the brakes previously. Drexler towards the inside, but not enough. because here comes the Audi, and the BMW has to go wide there and into the grass. Bjorn Brennan trying to go around the outside, contact between the two of them. Thankfully, they all keep it pointing in a straight line in the end, and that's Sebastian Krohn getting involved in this one as well, but he is a lap down. But Thomas Moran, late on the brakes, loves that move towards the inside of 21 there, and he gets it stopped beautifully. The BMW, I think, just caught out by how late on the brakes that he was, and unfortunately a little bit of contact on the rejoin with Bredin, but no major harm done between those guys. Pennon and Gamble still scrapping for P7 here. Unable to do anything. Another battle that we have forming is that between Van den Einde and Vassner. Vassner, after that mistake, the Ferrari driver currently in 13th position. If these two swap around, their car numbers will actually be in their positions in the race, which would be rather pleasant on the eye. But I'm sure Vassner won't want to give up this one very easily to the Belgian. Doing a very good job in the Ferrari. Not an easy car to extract pace out of, especially with the suspension difficulties that this car does suffer with as of late. 0.2 of a second again between Pennon and Gamble, but unable to do anything. White flag. Oh, that's Klaus. Klaus in towards a wall. Hard contact as several drivers also skipping the dipper there, I think, on the entry. Oh, and gets it completely wrong. Carries way too much speed in there. Lima just about slots through. Thankfully, is off the racing line enough. I think the BMW, I think that was Yukas that came through there, manages to take evasive action, getting close between Vaxstrom and Rolfer as they make their way through there. And now this gets very busy because Klaus is going to be extremely slow. Oh my goodness, almost contact on the entry was Forest Elbow. Klaus going very, very wide. Rolfer says thank you very much. The Vaxstrom goes through as well. I'm sure Jonathan Clifford is going to have a piece of this as well. The Lamborghini now watching the tussle taking place in front of him. Klaus running very damaged in that BMW, but here's the onboard in the right-hand drive Bentley. Jonathan Vaxstrom trying to close on the pink Aston Martin. He's got to run. Does he look one way in towards his braking zone? Can he repeat the feats of Morant? He's a bit more cautious on the brakes there, so we'll just have to try to uphold the pressure for the time being. As always, it's very much closed up between these three for 7th place. Hardy all back on the attack again. Pennon almost into the concrete wall as he is struggling with that car. Gamble glued to his diffuser, and Hardy watching, rubbing his hands together, waiting for a moment, an opportunity. And we know the straight line speed advantage that this BMW has, and he will be getting a lovely double slipstream down the hill next time around. And on those fresh tyres, he is closing very rapidly. And I think Gamble is going to be in a very tricky position. He has got the tow from Pennon in front to try to help him out here. And the acceleration out of Forest Elbow is good. Has stayed very nicely glued, in actual fact, to the back of Pennon. There's the view from the Porsche. I think Hardy might be a little bit too far back. Here comes Gamble. This is the closest he has been for a long, long time. Gamble, can he finally get the opportunity he requires? But the legs on the BMW are just too strong. Hardy getting involved in all of this one as well, but I don't think he's going to go for a move. And they stay as they were. 0.1 of a second separating Pennon and Gamble, and nose to tail, but still unable to make a move. Hardy, you can't see him behind that red Porsche, but he is absolutely glued. There he is on the fresh tyres. The German driver maybe has a bit more in the tank to get past Henrik Gamble here. White flag out for Kingston. I'm not sure if it was a moment on the mountain for the British driver, and there was! Oh, and that's heavy contact for the Aston Martin then. Big damage on the front of that car, and that is unfortunately what can happen. It's bad enough that the likes of Kota, when you make one mistake and the consequences it can have, but Bathurst is even worse. Hardy towards the outside now of Henrik Gamble, but he can't find the run on the run up towards turn 2, so they stay all as they were unless he can get a good exit towards turn 4. I don't think he can. What about Van den Einde versus Vassner now? These two close together. The Audi trying to outtrack the Ferrari on the run up around the outside again is the Belgian, but he can't make it stick there, and he will have to slot behind, although good momentum carried through in all of that. Does he think about a move up towards turn 4? Surely not. And he backs out of that one wisely. Number 12 car. Still 20 minutes left to go in this race, and right now does seem to have the pace advantage over the German driver in front of him, so he still has time. He can afford to be patient. 12 seconds between himself and the 33 Audi behind, and Mount Panorama will not hesitate to bite you and make you regret taking a bit too much liberty around this circuit if you push too hard. This trio then once again nose to tail. Gamble, kick of oversteer on the exit out Forest Elbow, trying to extract everything he can out of the flat 6 engine in that Porsche, but I don't think, again, it's going to be good enough to do anything to Pendon. And what about Hardy? Because here he comes on the fresh tyres in the BMW, gaining in this double slipstream. It's a big drag out towards the chase, and almost down towards the inside. Can't make it stick. Gamble, down the inside. Does he finally make it stick? Pendon leaves him room on the inside. Side-by-side action between the yellow flag for number 16 on the top of the hill. I'm not sure who that is, but Hardy now around the outside on the run up towards Murray's corner. BMW squeezed towards the grass. Henry Gamble trying desperately to hold on to this position. He can't afford to let that BMW through, because then surely all chances on 7th place will go out the window, and he does hold on to it, but there's another drag race left to go. Pendon, a car's length now between himself and Gamble, and Hardy absolutely stuck in this one. Can he gain anything on this run up the hill? Yes, he can indeed. He's going to surely be forced so to the outside by the Kramer Racing Esports car in front of him, but as the BMW got the grip, as it got the power to go toe-to-toe. Gamble, I thought he would have been deep on the brakes, a plump of the curb from the German driver behind him, but they all managed to get through there safely for the time being. Pendon, for the first time, opens up the gap to about half a second, and they follow all of the positions that they were in on the previous lap, but with some slightly larger gaps, although I don't imagine for all too long. But there is also another trio battling further down the order of Thomas Moran, Bjorn Bredin and Hillhorse. Also Drexler getting involved in this one as well. So we've got this quadruplet all battling between themselves. It's a drag race between the two Audis in the front of this battle, followed by the two BMWs. I don't think any of them are going to be able to gain an advantage. We know how late on the brakes Morant has been so far in this race, as Drexler almost into the back of Bredin in all of that. Surely doesn't think about a move towards the inside of turn 4. No, in actual fact, loses a little bit of time, so won't be able to make 8th and stick. What about this trio, though, for P7? 20 minutes of this race left to go. It's been absolutely nail-biting stuff the entire time. And Gamble again has a run onto Pendon. Which way does he go? He goes to the left. Pendon gives him the inside line, and maybe will be firmer on the overtake with Pendon. The Finnish driver, brilliant defence, holds it around the outside, and Hardy now responding on the comeback. Has the momentum. Gamble trying to see. A little bit of contact on the run up towards 23. Hard on the brakes is the German driver, and Hardy has to stay behind once more. Amazing scrap. Pendon, fantastic defence, keeps that outside line, doesn't want to defend the inside. Very unusual approach to the defence through there, but the Finnish driver is making that one work beautifully, lap after lap, despite the pressure that he has been under this entire time. And it's continuing to be that pressure, because that is the wrong diffuser. The M4 has got the Porsche all glued up to the back of him, but the BMW then just starts to reel away. Hardy almost towards the inside into turn 2. They can't make anything stick. The torque in the flat 6 of that Porsche, good on the run up to 3 and into 4, but there's just no opportunity. Pendon half defence into the middle of the track. Gamble, again, look at the acceleration on the Porsche. We saw how quick over the mountain he was previously. Do just want to check in on Morant versus Hillhorse versus Bredin. These three all absolutely nose to tail once again. Morant may have a look at some point on the run out towards top of the hill. That looked like a compromise moment for the BMW of Hardy for a minute there. I'm not sure if Jonathan Clifford gained a position onto James Rolfe there. It's difficult to tell. Thomas Moran now trying to search for space towards the inside. Has to look towards the outside. Surely can't make a stick around there. He's trying his best to. Contact on the exit. Bredin, big moment. A contact there sent around on the exit of turn 2. Bredin Coy involved in that one. And Morant sent into the barrier there. The man has been making big moves in the last few laps of this race. Ends up with big, heavy contact in the end. Meanwhile, Henry Gamble, the best opportunity he's had surely so far, towards the inside. Absolutely no room as they head towards the chase. Here comes Hardy as well. Too wide on the run in towards 21. Then Hardy down the inside. Gamble around the outside. He's on the grass. Contact between himself and the BMW, and I think Hardy's going to come out on top over the Porsche. And Henry Gamble, after all of those opportunities, loses 2 positions, in fact, because Forum says thank you very much and goes up into 9th place as well. And now Nico Pendon has the duel that he probably was hoping would never come, because Hardy was all over his gearbox previously earlier in this race, has fresher tyres, and and we know he has the straight line speed to contend with the BMW. Equal cars between these two, and he is already all over the gearbox of Pendon up the hill, but I think he might just be a little bit too far away on the run for the time being. Although Pendon he holds it in the middle of a track. He knows how to defend around her. He's been doing it brilliantly so far, but you can see the extra momentum. Was a big wiggle though for Hardy on the exit of turn 2. But the two of them do get through, as that's Drexler and Bredin side by side. Two wounded cars. I think Bredin, the one that's struggling a bit more. We've also got Rolf and Vaxstrom further down the order into Murray's. They go over 25 car down the inside of the 30, and he gets the move done. What about Vaxstrom versus Rolf? It looks like it's gone the way of the Bentley. We'll see if we can catch what happened there around the outside. The Bentley went into Walls 21 and gets the move done. Also, we've now got Tempest side by side with Polovchuk. The BMW looking a bit worse for wear. Both these cars have been in the wars a little bit over the course of this race, but side-by-side action between them stays clean for the time being. That's just checking back in with Hardy again, close up to the gearbox of Pendon. Let's see what sort of run has he got down towards the chase. We've seen him get involved in battles here before. He hasn't quite got the double toe effect he did previously, but it's enough of a run because here comes the German driver, and the number 11 car goes to the inside line. He's looking to defend the outside again, but I don't know if it's going to be enough. Side by side on the run in towards 21. Pendon desperately trying to hold it around the outside. Surely not! The Finnish driver is still there, even with the extra grip on board the 27 car. The Finnish driver not giving this one up by any means, but I think on the outside of Murray's corner surely doesn't have enough to hold back the German, and the overcut strategy eventually comes good for the 27. He had to work hard for that one, but Dave Hardy back into 7th place, completes a fantastic overtake. He was patient with that one over the last few laps, and Pendon, valiant defence, and he's now also got Florence closing in as well, who seems to maybe have a little bit more race pace at this point with 15 minutes left to go, and he won't want to lose too much more. Pendon's got to be careful, and will actually be trying to probably make use of the slipstream from Hardy in front of him if he can to defend from the Mercedes behind. We've also got Vaxstrom and Clifford that are close to one another. I think the Bentley closing in. Also, Korekis closing in to Schubert over the last couple of laps as well. Also, very notably, Jardier's pace, considering the difficult day he has had, lapping almost on par with our race leader Florian, who has had a faultless day so far. So Jardier looking very quick and has closed the gap down to 7 seconds, less than that, to Solstop. I think it might be a little too late. The Bentley trying to go around the outside of Clifford in towards turn 1, runs a little bit wide actually on the exit. Got to be careful of James Rolfe, and who is that? I think that's Henrik Gamble. Who's actually, no, that is Marco. Is that Marco Bischoff? It is at the tail end of this. So this isn't a battle for position as far as Marco's concerned, but between the likes of Clifford, Vaxstrom, and James Rolfe in that pink Aston Martin, this is all very much for position. Marco Bischoff just having to settle back here, just watching all of this unfold. Very difficult day, but still pushing on is the German driver. And consistency over the course of the season does pay dividends. Bad day for the reigning champion, but still plenty of opportunities later on to make something happen. Sean Tempest and Polchuk side by side on the run towards turn 2, but Tempest losing out on that one. The 23 car maintains that 27th spot. Meanwhile, Dave Hardy already has opened up a gap of a second to Pendon, so those fresh tyres working wonders for the German driver. Florence hasn't been able to do too much as of yet about the Finnish driver in the BMW in front of him, and Henrik Gamble has actually dropped back away from this group quite considerably, so I don't think he has anything left in those tyres, as he was scrapping very hard previously. How do they fare between Rolfe and Vaxstrom? Just under half second between these two drivers. As thank you to the moderators containing a second invasion on the stream. Loving this 90-minute race. The bots this evening about as much as we are, as James Rolfe, the Canadian, goes a bit too deep under brakes there. Thankfully gathers it all up in time to not lose too much, but takes himself out of a potential opportunity to put Vaxstrom under pressure. Another battle that is forming is that between Andre Bayer and Roman Yukas. You can see Yukas swinging over to the left-hand side, trying to break that toe at the last minute. Trying to maintain any advantage he possibly can over the Audi behind. 12 minutes left on the clock. No rain in this race, unfortunately, but my goodness, I think a bit of rain would have been too much for any of us to be able to deal with, to be quite honest, because we have had absolute non-stop action from start to finish. And all of this, white flag for Rolf. Not sure. I think that was letting through Florian there. We have not seen too much. James Rolf was also actually letting through the Porsche of Bischoff, and that looked like a kick of gravel up for Andre Bayer, I think, through McPhillamy. Suspiciously lost a chunk of time. Oh, nowhere near as much time as I thought. That was just the leaderboard being a bit too sensitive in all of that. There was also a white flag for this man, Paulo Lima, the Portuguese driver, in 15th position. Number 32 car in the service, so that is a very profitable day for him. Meanwhile, Florence now has closed up to the back of Nico Pennon, so that gap that the Finnish driver had hasn't been maintained for very long. We know how quick this BMW is in a straight line, so it's going to be difficult for the Mercedes to make a move stick, but Mercedes probably, I would say, the fastest car in a straight line, I believe, around this circuit, even with the power detune applied with the latest update. I think just the torque that is in that V8. See, such a mean looking car, and you hear the tyres screeching, the rears burning up in the number 11's car as Max Florence, number 14, Mercedes, desperately trying to see if he can make a move and snatch P8 in the final 10 minutes of this race. Both drivers navigating their way through McPhillamy and into Skyline pretty neatly. More aggression, though, from Florence. You can see gaining through all of that and just putting a bit more pressure on those concrete walls. Not too much, though. Otherwise, of course, you will get a tag of damage. Squirrely under brakes of Forrest Elbow and a swapping of positions between Clifford and Vaxter. The Bentley trying to go around the outside towards turn 2, and I think he might have enough of an overlap unless Clifford can brake very late, and he's trying it. The American driver forcing Vaxter onto the outside line, and the Bentley losing out in the process. Florian Duakop having a nightmare in all of this as he tries to make his way through just cleanly amongst all of these cars, and Vaxter almost into the wall for a second there. Meanwhile, back on board with the fight for P8 then. Florence and Pennon absolutely scrapping between one another. Pennon feeling the need to defend the inside in towards Murray Corner then. And Florence gets the cut back up towards turn 1. I don't think he's quite got the momentum. White flag for Duakop as that's Clifford off on the run up towards Skyline. That's not what he needs. And Vaxstrom's going to benefit in all of that. He gets past Clifford. And Florian Duakop, I'm sure, heart-in-mouth moment for the German driver who hasn't put a foot wrong all day, but thankfully manages to get through without incident. Meanwhile, Florence now in a position to really make a challenge for this P8 position in the dying moments of this race around the outside. The number 14 car goes side by side on the entry there. Pendon, though, places the car exactly where he needs it. He has been defending valiantly all race long, and does it once more to the Mercedes behind. Meanwhile, Alex Kingston now storms down the inside of Bjorn Bredin, who I don't think has anything to fight back with. Oh, that was a bit messy though on the exit for the Aston Martin. That might give Bjorn the run that he needs to try to come back at him, going in towards Murray Corner. The 30 car back down the inside into that corner, parks it on the exit as well. The Aston Martin nowhere to go in all of that. And he'll have to wait for another opportunity. Florian coming up to this battle again. He must be praying that none of these drivers make a mistake. Only 8 minutes left on the clock to round out what has been a stunning, rather lonely drive at the front of the field, but a stunning one nonetheless. Lucas Schubert just coming out of turn 1 now in the background has done a fantastic job to challenge the fellow Mercedes. Same has to be said for Grantis Korekis. The Porsche struggling for pace today. He is only 2 seconds adrift of P2. Kingston still all over the back of Bjorn Bredin as blue flags waving for Florian. These two still scrapping hard on the run-up the hill. Let's go on board, in actual fact, with your race leader. We haven't seen all too much from him, but he's been very consistent this race. and he will just be really wanting these two to get out of the way, and Kingston actually very nobly getting out of the way in the run up the hill. Got to be careful though of Backstrom. Oh dear. Oh, that was getting very scary for a moment. Bjorn Bredin also backed off heavily on the run up towards Skyline. Florian slots his way through. Kingston almost loses a position to Backstrom now, and it's all getting very busy. Marco Bischoff involved in this one as well. That's not for position, confusingly. And we've got yellow flag up for Thomas Morant. What has happened to the German driver whose day goes from bad to worse, or is that just a big backing off of the throttle? It is. He's just hit the brakes very hard to let Soldatov go flying on by. Meanwhile, what's going on here? Van den Einde now suddenly all over the back of Vassner on the run up towards turn 2 again. These two were scrapping earlier. Ferrari having another go around the outside, but surely can't make that one stick, and Vassner holds that inside line. Meanwhile, Vackstrom and Kingston side by side towards the chicane. The Bentley trying to go around the outside again, and he does make it stick. And Marco Bischoff not exactly knowing where to put his car in all of this. He's not battling for these positions, but admittedly, he doesn't want to lose any time. In actual fact, Jonathan Clifford storming down the inside, and Bischoff allowing him through because he is involved in this fight. And all of a sudden, in the dying moments of this race, we have got some battles that are hotting up between some of our drivers. Koreca still within 2 seconds of Schubert, but not able to do anything else. Those drivers all dealing with the traffic. You see, that's Korekis on the tail end of that. He's got one car between himself and Schubert at the moment in terms of that traffic. Henrik Gamble has closed up to the back of Max Florence, who's dropped a few tenths away from the BMW of Pendant. You see, that Porsche, again, just completely hopeless to the straight line speed of these other cars. Has had great pace overall, but just no straight line speed to contend with. But these two both closing back up to Pendant as white flag as Morant slows for Jardier as it all gets very busy once more. This is extremely messy now, and also a nightmare for Schubert in all of this because he's on the tail end of these cars. He's got Bischoff in front of him who's a lap down, and he's got the other cars all bringing out blue flags. Kingston almost into the gravel there for a moment, and that is white flag for Schubert, the man in P2, making a small mistake over the crest. And look at that, Korekis is right there. So this is a nightmare right now for Schubert. Florian Duacon managed to get through okay in the end, but this is really losing a huge amount of time for Schubert, who will be desperate for all of these cars to get out of the way. Three-way tussle for P8 then between Pennant, Florence and Gamble, with the BMW still leads this trio. But look at that, the gap that was 2 seconds now down to a second, and these cars still not getting out of the way, but they are a little bit further up the field. Meanwhile, Van den Einde are almost making a move around the outside again up towards turn 2, but can't make anything stick in all of that. What about Max Florence go on board with the Mercedes driver for just a moment? Up 11 positions in this race. He desperately tries to hold on to the back of Pendant over the top of the mountain. Gap between Schubert and Korekis has opened up and maintained at the 1 second mark, but there are still lapped cars in front of them. As what's gone on there between Bredin and Backstrom on the exit of Hell Corner, then side-by-side drag race between the BMW and the Bentley on the run up towards turn 2 now. Bjorn Bredin wounded in that car. Sean Tempest has brought out the yellow flag on the exit of that's the entry to the pit lane. Actual fact, Lucas Schubert flashing the lights. He wants these guys to desperately get out of the way. Korekis now getting a bit bogged down in all of this as well. He's got Kingston between himself and the man that sits in P2. Vaxstrom comes out on top in all of that, and this is an absolute nightmare for Lucas Schubert in all of this, and Bredin does get out of the way, but Korekis is right there. Korekis absolutely glued now to the back of the Mercedes driver. Kingston taking advantage of Bredin backing off. This is chaos over the top of the mountain, and Korekis now, after being 2 seconds adrift for such a long time, finds himself in a position to maybe contend for a P2 spot. Just Lucas Schubert, victim to the traffic. Florian Duacop had a nightmare through here previously, but the Mercedes driver that sits in P2 and has been in P2 for this entire race, having a much more difficult time, and Korekis playing with the gears there, desperately trying to get it stopped as he heads down towards the dipper. He knows the straight line speed is in favour of the Mercedes, so he needs to extract everything that he possibly can. Schubert will benefit a little bit off the toe of front, as that was a white flag for Henrik Gamble. What happened there to the car in P10? And the answer is absolutely nothing. So that was the leaderboard having a bit of a moment about as excited and concerned as I am in all of this. Karekas, 2/10 of drift. Does he think about a big dive? Surely not. And Schubert holds on to that position, but he has got a couple of laps of close fighting, surely, with Karekas. I think Jonathan Clifford may have just got the move done on Bredin on the run down the hill, as Marco Bischoff sits around in all of this as well. Karekas, half-second adrift now of Schubert. 2 more laps left to go. Flashing of the lights again from the German driver, desperately trying to get the Bentley of Vaxstrom out the way in front of him. Does not need this, but Karekas desperately trying to go for big points here with his championship rival now, with Massier potentially out of the picture with 3 dropped rounds. Marco Bischoff and Karekas likely to be your main championship protagonists going into the final few rounds of the season, and this is a big day for Karekas to try to work his way back into that battle. Meanwhile, Max Floren's trying to go around the outside of Pendon, defends the inside of the Finnish driver for the first time this race almost, and he holds off the Mercedes for the time being. Max Lawrence will have a couple more opportunities, but desperately trying to force the issue in these last couple of remaining laps. What about Lohan van den Einde? He can't do any more either in the Ferrari. White flag again now for Henrik Gamble. As all yellow flag for Durkop. Durkop's in the wall! Durkop's in the wall! Can you believe it? The German driver has lost it! What's happened there for Durkop? Gets a huge moment on the exits of McPhillamy Park. Somehow manages to keep it pointing in the right direction. And this is going to be absolute chaos, surely, in the final lap. How much damage does the German driver have? And it's going to be so close in terms of when they cross the line as well. Schubert and Karekas, 5 seconds adrift. But how much damage is on board the Unicorns that love Mercedes as he slammed in towards the wall. Florian, after such a clean and lonely race before the mistake, might come out in all that chaos with the lapped cars. But it hasn't. It's come out of an unforced error all of his own. Max Florian still unable to do anything, as white flag again for Florian, so he's clearly driving slowly. There's Schubert and Karekas flying in the screen in the background. What is it going to be in terms of the line? I think Florian has to go. I don't think he can pause. It's a risk if he does it, and it's going to be so awkward. And this is the final lap. So one more lap. Damage on the Mercedes, on the race leader. And Lucas Schubert and Karekas will be closing in behind on this final lap. The German driver now has to just try to keep his head 3/10 down through the opening corner. The Unicorns love Mercedes. You can see the damage on the front of that car. It's an absolute disaster for Florian. But can he keep it in the lead for one more lap? Meanwhile, Max Florenz close to the back of Pendon for the penultimate time, trying to use the slipstream and the drag race in the Mercedes down towards the chase. Which way does he go? Towards the right-hand side, and side by side in towards the chase. Schaefer and Gamble also side by side. Oh, a big moment over the crest there for Florence. Around the outside he goes. Can he make it stick this time around? Nudged by the Finnish driver and sent towards the outside there. Robin Schaefer managed to get past Gamble on the drag race down towards there as well. Let's check back in with our drivers at the front of the field. 3 seconds now the gap between Schubert and Florian. White flag for Henrik Gamble again. I think that's just leaderboard just having a bit of chaos. And there it is. It's closing all the time. Florian not making the same mistake he did last time round. Wounded through here. 2.7 seconds now the gap between Schubert and Florian Durkop. And now surely, if he can just pull it through these last few corners, despite that moment, despite the damage on that car, Schubert and Karekas still dueling out for the second place position. Toe for Florian as well, off the BMW in front. White flag for Drexler, that's for slowing for Florian Durkop. 2.5 seconds now the gap. He's lost 1.5 seconds on this last lap. There's the Mercedes and there's the Porsche behind, but only 3 more corners to go. Can Florian hold onto it side by side between Van den Einde and Vassner again on the run up towards turn 4? Van den Einde's going to be sent towards the outside, but after all the chaos, he had such a calm and clean race for so long, but despite the mayhem at the end, I think he's going to bring it home. Not by much, but Florian Durkop celebrates as he wins here at Bathurst with a brilliant victory. Schubert holds off Karekas, who valiantly fought for P2, but my goodness, drama all in the end. Yellow flag for Gamble. Gamble, I think, has had an issue over the top of the hill. Yellow flag out for the German driver, who's been dropping down the order. That's very slow. Has he run out of fuel? I'm not sure what has happened there for Henrik Gamble. Meanwhile, final scraps to the line. Pennon, I think, has managed to hold on enough to keep this P8 spot. He couldn't hold on to P7 from Dave Hardy, but he has fought Gamble and Florence very hard in the last moments of this race. And I think he might just about have enough to hold on to it. Van den Einde again close up to the back of Sasha Vassner. Is it going to be a dive? Which way does he go? Oh, steaming down the inside. He's completely misses braking. Henrik Gamble. Oh, he almost takes out the Porsche. And across the grass goes the Belgian driver. And what about Henrik Gamble, who's limping home? By the looks of it, can Sasha Vassner get him at the end? Defensive towards the inside line. Vassner's there, but I think the Porsche is just about going to hold on to it. Oh, it's going to be so close, and he doesn't. Vassner takes it out of the line. Gamble takes P12 in the end. Van den Einde has to settle for 13th place. My goodness. This is absolute drama from start to finish, but would we expect anything else from Bathurst? My goodness, what an absolutely chaotic race throughout all of that. I think our final drivers completing their laps now on circuit. I'm trying to find who is remain left to go, but my goodness. Well, we knew that the green hell of Australia was going to make for a busy race, but my goodness, I would never have predicted in a million years it would be that Florian, after such a clean day of racing, brings it home eventually after that complete chaos at the end. My goodness, have you ever seen anything like it? That was absolutely monstrous stuff that the Mountain decided to throw at us today. My goodness. We'll have a run through the order in just, or the final results in just a moment. It'd be lovely if we could get some people in for interviews, because that was a busy race and a half, but what an ending in all of that. As I'll just wait for those to come through. Utterly dramatic scenes, though, throughout the grid in the diamonds of that race. It was chaos from start to finish, and just when you thought that there was one constant, one thing that you could count upon in the final stages of the race, it decided to throw another spanner in the works, and wow, that was just absolute mayhem. But somehow Florian holds on to the end. One more lap, and I think Schubert and Karekas would have been right there. And I'm sure that Florian would have been absolutely distraught if he didn't bring that one home. But after a fantastic bit of race pace, after fantastic qualifying, he does just about enough to take his first win in the Pro Series. His best result by far after such a difficult season, I would say. He's shown such great potential at times, and it's just fallen away from him. Here's the official results then. Florian Durecomp takes a win ahead of Schubert. Karekas finishes in third, important for the championship. Soldatov for the Jardier in fifth after his day, which was very difficult. Only 2 seconds, 2.5 seconds between himself and Soldatov at the end. Imagine what he could have done without that damage. He was driving very, very quick at stages of the race there. Meanwhile, I trying to get the other portion of my graphic on screen if I can, thank you. And as we've got on the tail end of the top 10, Valentine in 6th, Dave Hardy 7th. Brilliant overcut strategy there for the German driver, and the number 27 car finishing in 7th place. Amazing stuff from him. Nico Pennon, valiant defence from him throughout all of that. Holds off Florence to take 8th position in the end. And then Florence settles for 9th, with Robin Schaefer snatching 10th place later on. Vassner just about getting across the line in front of Gamble. I think Gamble must have run out of fuel on the final lap. And what an effort he put into today's race with all of that. But in the end, only comes away in 12th position in the end. Lohan van den Einde finishes 13th. Janis Taxnis in the 33. Audi finishes 14th. Lima 15th. Yukas 16th. Andre Bayer 17th. Boris Schulk in 18th position. And I think is your biggest mover of the day, gaining 16 positions in this race, is the boss man himself. And my graphic has decided to do weird and wacky things once again, just for fun, so I can't actually quite see some of these other results for the time being. Unfortunately, I can only see 21st at the moment until things loop back around again, so we'll see once those pop up and we'll rattle through the final positions. But the drama post-race being about as dramatic as what we had throughout the entire 90 minutes of action in all of that. So where did we get to as we make our way on to the next page of the graphics? So Hillhorse, Drexler rounding out top 20, then Vaxstrom, Kingston, Clifford, Rolf, Bredin, Polchuk, Morant, Petrol, Bischoff, and Tempest sitting your way to 30th, although Polchuk, Morant, and some of the drivers seemingly not scoring any points in all that, so I don't think Bischoff unfortunately came away with anything. And then DNS for Sebastian Krohn, Suarez, Melez, Kreisner, and Igor Ognotkov in all of that as well. So a busy day for all of our drivers up and down the order. But my goodness, what a chaotic race from start to finish. I wouldn't have expected anything else from the mountain, and what a way for us to celebrate here at LFM these amazing milestones we've hit in the past week. It doesn't look like, unfortunately, we're going to get any interviews, which is a big shame, because with so much drama in that race, it would have been lovely to speak to some of the drivers. But huge congratulations to Florian Duicot for taking his first pole position and first win in the Pro Series. The Mercedes driver finally managing to put together the full package, almost dropping it at the end, but doing just enough to bring it across the line at the end. Big stuff also for Schubert to get a podium, and Karekas on the day where the Porsche was not strong, and he capitalised beautifully on his championship rival Marco Bischoff having an absolute disaster. So Karekas now very much in the championship fight. We'll have to see how all that plays out later on in the season. And also next week, where will we be heading? We will be going to the Nürburgring, so it's going to be the home track for a lot of our drivers, including our reigning champion Marco Bischoff, and potentially some rainy conditions to deal with there as well. So I'm sure that is going to be a busy one, and just as dramatic as an action-packed as the Pro Series has constantly proven to be throughout this season. Last season, every race we have had has been nothing short of incredible. And if you want to join in with that action next week and watch again, then do tune in same time, same place for that one, where we'll be heading for an hour of racing at the Nürburgring. And just as a quick answer, I'm afraid that I can't show anything to do with the incident. I have no access to replays sort of directly after stream, unfortunately. I am ever so sorry. I would love to see it myself, but both of those guys will have been doing their streams, so I'm sure that from both their POVs, you will be able to catch what happened between those guys. And if you want to see also more of the action in the future, then do also consider subscribing to the channel as well. And also, if the spectating perspective has given you a bit of an inkling of wanting to have a try at some of this yourself, and you want to do some of the driving here on LFM, then do also head over to the website at lowfuelmotorsport.com. Get yourself signed up, get yourself a license, work your way through the ranks, and you could be competing on track for some amazing prizes alongside some of the greatest on the platform that you have been witnessing tonight with all of that. And if you're also just looking for a fantastic community to discuss everything good motorsport and sim racing, then do also consider joining the Discord server. And as a final thing, again, LFM will have their stand at Sim Racing Expo for any of you in the chat that are looking to attend there. So do also say hello to LFM there. It'd be lovely to see as many of you in person as possible. And also thank you everybody so much once again for all the support over all these streams and races over the past 3 months, and helping us achieve some amazing milestones before we even got into the last month of the year. So amazing stuff, and thank you all for your support this evening, and look forward to seeing you, as many of you, there next week as possible at the Nürburgring, where undoubtedly we will have some great action once again. But for this evening then, it will be goodbye.